Good morning and welcome to the work session for the Pitkin County Board of Commissioners. It's Tuesday, March 28th, and we are starting with Kathy Hall again. In the room, we have Kelly, Patty, Steve, and myself, and Greg is on spring break. So it's all you, Kathy.
Great. We'll just introduce ourselves. I'm Brian Pettit. I'm the Public Works Director.
I'm Kathy Hall. I'm the Solid Waste Director.
My name's Jake Midkiff, and I'm with Weaver Consultants Group, and we do landfill engineering for the county.
Okay.
Great. So we are here today to talk about a proposed expansion of the landfill, which we knew would be coming to the board. As the board knows, the landfill is one of our economic indicators in the county. It's real time, and we have seen record debris coming into the landfill over the last couple of years, and it's not slowing down. The good news, bad news of that is it brings revenue into the landfill. The bad news is it fills the landfill up quicker than we would rather see. Despite the efforts of Kathy to have some of the most innovative diversion programs in the state. So what we did a few years ago, we bought some time by having a 6 to 8 year north expansion. And now we would like to do possibly a larger expansion. So today we'd like to introduce that to you so you understand the magnitude of what we're calling the south expansion and the west expansion.
So as Brian alluded to, oh goodness.
You thought you had that down.
You think I'd learn by now. There you go. All right. So, as Brian alluded to, we are working furiously to extend the life of the landfill as much as we can. So last year, about a year ago, we completed the north expansion, which bought us about 6 to 8 years of landfill capacity. We're filling it rather quickly. We had another record incoming waste year last year. So probably as we sit today, we have about 6 years of landfill capacity left. And in landfill life, that's not a long time. So we've got to start working on where we're going to go next. So we, again, opened that expansion on June 3rd, 2022. And we're not quite a year in, but it's filling rather quickly. So we begin planning for the next landfill expansions, and that will require some infrastructure relocation. So in terms of it, we're looking at potentially 70 to 80 years of additional landfill life, and Jake will get into the details of that.
Woohoo!
So the south expansion is about 25 years, and the west expansion is about another 45 years or longer. So,
Assuming the current
Yeah, that
use.
estimate is based off of real-time,
Okay.
volumes. So
It's not projecting any growth of stuff coming in.
no, correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's in real time. Yeah. So the drawing you see here reflects sort of what the planned expansions and existing expansions are. In green, you see the north expansion, which was constructed in 2021. And like Kathy said, that added, about 7 years of life. So
Jake,
then,
could you orient based on Highway 82 and the entry road?
yeah,
please?
so Highway 82 is to my right. And so Kathy's got her cursor on it right there. So that's Highway 82. And then, so that's the entrance road coming up from Highway 82. And then you can see off to the right there's the shooting range. So then the scale house and existing MRF sit under that yellow portion, which the yellow outline is the proposed south expansion, which will add about 2.5 million cubic yards and a ballpark of 25 to 27 years of additional landfill life. That will also include a modern day liner system that's protective of the environment. And then in blue, you can see what the west expansion would look like. So the blue dashed line represents the extent of where waste will go in the west expansion, where the blue hat or the blue shading reflects the area where additional liner will be placed for that western expansion. So we can go to the next slide. So in order to make room for the south expansion, so that expansion that was in yellow, we'll need to relocate the scale house offices HHW facility in Murph that are in their current existing location. So what we have laid out here shows we'll use the same entrance road, but as you're coming up around it will diverge into a new entrance road that will cut in around to the north. And then the area hatched in orange will be the new scale house facility. That footprint is sort of based off the amount of space they have now for that facility. And then what's hatched in pink would reflect a new Murph HHW area. So we'd be relocating all their, scale house and infrastructure to that.
Can you point on there where the current location of the scale?
Yeah, so if you go back one, actually.
Yeah, go back one.
Yeah, so it's right there, and then if you see the X hatch on this drawing by where the tank is, so that's the proposed new entrance facility.
okay.
So we would be putting a sharp turn in as you're coming up the road to the scale house, and it would cut over that way to where.
So you'd be looking down on 82.
Yes, yeah. And we'll have a video that has a visual representation of what
cool.
that'll look like coming up here. So.
And it goes in the yard where the new operations and maintenance facility is. This is where the new operations maintenance facility is. So everything will be conglomerated down there.
That's how people will enter.
Yes, yeah. We'll be abandoning the existing entrance road about halfway up so that we can add additional stormwater infrastructure, and it's the most economical way to expand the landfill.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question about, and maybe you'll hit on this later, about slope
Sure.
and the sharp turn and the truck traffic and the distance to the rest of the landfill, because right now you're kind of located in the center. Now you're pushing people over here. Are they going to have to come back down that narrow road down from the ops? The new
So
ops building?
that road from the operations, we will flip back around there. We can expand that access road if need be, and to the west expansion, we could have access to the north there. The slopes and grades of the proposed addition to the road will not exceed the grades of the.
What about where the hatch marks are? Where
Yeah,
you
no,
put the-
those grades will still be at or under what the other grades on the road
Okay,
are at.
I'm
at
just
this time.
concerned about the sharp turn, this water drainage pit, pool, pond, whatever we call it, and just the fact that we're moving everything over there, and what kind of internal traffic that might generate. You might hit on that later, but those are just.
Sure, yeah. So
You can touch on those when you get to them.
okay, yeah.
Thanks.
And Jake, just for people's edification, the reason we're looking at the current facility for filling with trash is because why?
Well, so there's a couple of reasons. One, it's economically advantageous for waste to be adjacent to waste. It allows us to get more cubic yardage of airspace if it flops onto an existing waste slope. It's also more economical for filling. It has environmental advantages because we'll be putting a geosynthetic overliner over areas that have waste in them that go back to the 60s that don't have liners. So we'll be keeping some of the infiltration and rainfall off of those areas and be collecting all of that liquid into a sump so that we could treat it and manage that in a more environmentally friendly way. So that's another advantage of it. In addition, we have permitted airspace over the area of where the current MRF and entrance facility are. And there's some old waste underneath that area that we don't exactly have a clear idea of the extent of where it exists both laterally and vertically. So in the process of expanding to that south expansion, we want to investigate the depth and extent of that waste and potentially remove a significant portion of it to flop into engineered landfill cells so that we can reduce potential for environmental harm in that area. So several reasons why that makes
You've done a
sense.
little thinking about this. So,
A little.
so is the new building the one to the right of the green from looking at the slide? Is that the new
Yeah,
building?
that, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Now I'm oriented. Thank you.
So, Francie, I have a question. Your composting area is up in what is the blue on there?
Yes.
And how will you access that if the yellow part is all being having a liner put on it, the road's gone at that point.
Yeah, we'll still have access.
Good
So
question.
one thing I should say is, these are conceptual drawings that we're in a pretty early planning phase, but
Yeah.
we'll be able to maintain access to the existing compost facility through the use of the south expansion. The grades will allow for that, so the yellow portion will allow for that. It is something we'll need to address long term as we go into the west expansion. How we'll relocate within the confines of the property of the landfill, the composting facility.
You know, the compost thing might move down to where the green is when the green's all filled up,
Exactly. I mean,
or
there's
something
several
like
there's
that.
several options, and we'll work with the county operationally to identify what the best location for them is. But sort of the locations where it's advantageous to place waste and cost effective to place waste control sort of the layout, and then we'll move the composting facility around or accordingly.
No, I was just trying to read what I couldn't read.
Brian, did you?
Yeah, and our intent is not to have any adverse impacts on current operations.
Right.
So our current diversion programs, including composting, will continue.
So there'll be no delays anyway.
Right.
I have a question about our landfill in general. Like you're saying, some of the stuff under the current scale house, that area, is old landfill?
Correct.
Does old landfill areas, do they ever in one person's lifetime get to a point where you can re-dig them and use them?
Like mine them?
Like, no.
They call it mining. They call it mining the landfill.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, where it can be, the dirt can be moved and you can reuse it and.
Depends what's under there, and like Jake alluded to, we don't quite know. There's suspicion that back in the 60s and 70s they took septage in that area. We do know there is waste. So Jake, we're going to we're going to come out and do probing holes and kind of get to figure out what's under there, how deep it is, and depending on that, we'll start conversations with the state about removing it and then putting a liner in.
Moving it or removing it?
Probably moving it to the
Yeah,
current.
Yeah, okay.
flopping it to
Yeah, okay.
a cell that's engineered so that we can collect the wastewater that it produces.
Can I tag on to that, Francie? Well, when did they close the landfill, the dump, which it was, at the Moorfields?
It's the early 60s,
Okay.
right before the city and the county jointly opened up the current location.
I remember when you played flag football, when we played flag football on that field, there was waste coming up through the grass,
Yeah.
like sharp pieces of metal. It wasn't covered very well.
We've come a long way, baby.
That is true.
Absolutely. Can't do that anymore.
Tough. Kids are tough in Aspen.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've got scars to prove it. Thanks, Francie.
So these are the contours of what would be the top of the south expansion, so the area that I had outlined in yellow. And then the area that's outlined in blue would be a new stormwater pond so that we could more effectively collect all the stormwater that's coming off the landfill. So that's part of the reason that's controlling why we would shut off that access road, so that we could, get more effective stormwater collection in a low-lying location for runoff from the landfill. As you can see, we already talked about this briefly, but we will have to, demo everything in the area of the scale house and MRF, so there is some added cost to that. But I think, some of the risk related to having unknown extensive waste underneath that area that we would be mitigating, or maybe worth the cost trade-off there.
So you'd be moving the place where we dump stoves and that kind of stuff, that would just go somewhere else?
Yes.
And then I want to go back to what you were saying, Brian, about not having any delays. But you're going to use the same scale house that offices and just move them? Or you're going to build a new one?
We'll have to build we have budgeted plans to construct new facilities, and that would happen first.
Okay,
because
so you
this-
just keep using the old one, build a new one, and then move over
Move
there.
everything
Okay,
over.
good.
And then we could tear all that out and build
Yeah.
the south expansion.
And
Yeah.
put it in the landfill.
Yes, correct.
Only divert it.
Waste diversion program.
We
Not all
have,
of
a,
it.
we have a construction demolition diversion, so we have to meet that.
Look for a buyer to move it to somebody's property for.
People, that old green building there, that metal building, people have said, "I'll take it." So
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think we took it used.
Right.
Yeah.
Just thinking iron.
It's got a real life. So.
That's good to know.
So then this is the final grade contours of what would be the proposed west expansion. So that almost all of that area will sit over areas that currently hold waste. So what we would do there is called an overliner. So we would put an engineered liner over the areas that are, you know, pre-subtitle D, so prior to when they required us to put in these engineered liner systems. We would put a liner over that area. So again, that provides a real environmental benefit because we're limiting all that infiltration that is possible now into the waste mass that doesn't have a liner system, and adding, you know, 50 years of life to the landfill by doing so. So I put together a couple of slides that have visual influence of the expansions. So this green one, this first one, is of the north expansion that is already permitted and in place. So the areas that are green are where you can see the landfill from, and the areas in red on the bottom drawing you cannot see the landfill from. And then you can see the outline of the expansion area in bright green there on the bottom left-hand corner.
I don't get it.
Okay, so on the bottom picture of the two, the areas that are green,
You mean olive green?
yeah,
Okay.
where Kathy's moving her cursor. So those areas, if you were standing in them, you could see the landfill from that location,
The current landfill.
the current landfill.
And
So
those are east of 82?
yes,
Okay.
yep. And so that is the newest cell that we just built that is active, that's permitted, that's taking waste at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, so if you go to the next slide. So this is with the south expansion. I would just note here that the visual influence really doesn't change at all from the existing north expansion to the south expansion. It's this, you can't see the landfill from any additional locations than you could with what's existing at the time, at the present. And then one more. And then this would be the west expansion, and the same thing is true for that. The areas that you can currently see the landfill from are still the only places that you can see the landfill from.
So what in general, the semicircular bowl that the landfill fits in, you can see the landfill from a certain area of the county now. That will continue to be the case, but there is no other visual influence on other areas because of the configuration of the bowl.
Okay.
What about Aspen Village?
None.
Because we'll hear from
Yeah.
Aspen
Yeah,
Village.
none.
Yeah, and so then the last thing we have is a video that represents. This is all the existing topo, so we'll fly over to several places and show visual influence on those things and some of the expansion areas.
That's a quick question. Will you see the new scale house from 82?
You'll see that in
See
the
that in here?
video. Yeah, we're sort of thinking along the lines of some tree screening there, or we could put in an artificial berm. You will be able to see it, but it won't be like aggressive. So.
That's a good question.
Won't be breaking the ridge line at all, will it?
No, it sits kind of up on that ridge.
I mean, I'd say we can't do that because we don't let anybody else do that,
Sure.
so.
We'll have a short scale house.
It should be.
Okay.
It's pretty short.
Need to move it back or something, if that were the case.
All right, that's a cool photo. Right? Is that a
So it's a graphical representation using the surveyed topography.
Played earlier.
Maybe you just need to exit out of.
Okay, that'll work.
Cannot play media.
Hmm.
Do you know where you got this from?
It's hard to get videos to play.
Yeah, we
Can we try it on this?
I'm not sure.
Well, if we can't play it, we'll
let's talk through it.
we'll talk through it.
We can imagine what it would have looked like.
We're good at that.
I'm gonna open it to continue without scanning.
We tried this out at home.
Is it one of those that says, do not try at home?
Right.
There we go.
Are the kids on vacation this week?
They are on spring break, yep.
So what are they doing today?
We had guests from Denver who went home this morning. So they were playing, and then Scott took them sledding, and then they were
Beautiful day to be out
going
there.
to Arc. Yeah, we
So they've
skied
Scott today.
yesterday. Yeah, Scott's home a bunch this week, which is nice. Yeah, Aloysius is getting really good. You can ski top to bottom at Bum.
There we go.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Share.
It's definitely changed everything, which is great.
Well, I have a grandson in Costa Rica and a granddaughter in the Bahamas.
Oh, my God, and you're here.
Talk about princessy.
All right, here we go.
Okay,
Just
so
something doesn't sound fair about that.
this video will zoom in. It's moving pretty slow there, but so this is just an overview of the landfill area. There's the existing north expansion. South expansion pops in.
That road bothers me. The new access.
Sure, they have engineers working on it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michaela.
How old is that pond?
Look at that. That is so
Great
cool.
drainage pond, the one that's,
It's been there for
has it been
ever
there?
since I've
So there's the north expansion, which is existing now, pops in. Then the next visual is the south expansion that we're proposing that sits over the scale house area. And finally in blue, we have the west expansion coming in. Then we'll zoom to 82 to the north, so you can see that there's no visual impact from there.
This is really cool. Jeez, look at that.
82 has never looked that good.
There's no modern.
No traffic.
Look, there's no trash, there's no Dalwhinnie
Any
signs
signs,
or anything.
there's no
River is
potholes,
so blue.
there's
So
no
this shot's
traffic.
the primary zone of influence. And here you would be standing in the primary visual zone, and we'll see the
And there's
landfill
no
cells
Christmas
pop
tree
in.
lights.
There's the north expansion. There's the south expansion.
And what will it look like?
Like a
Well, it
landfill.
won't be blue or yellow. It'll be.
Quite at that.
And then here's where the scale house is.
Oh, it's kind of up on that hill.
Yeah, right next to the new building.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't know how you can screen that from the highway.
Well, it might, I think they'll put up story poles before we
Absolutely.
Yeah,
decide the
yeah.
exact
But look at
Yeah.
that road.
location or whatever, yeah.
That's the existing road, and then you're branching off.
Yeah, right. We'll cut off the existing road, and you could see it on there.
That road as it is now
How do
is.
you handle backups? Like how far,
Traffic
you know?
backup?
Yeah, because right now you're kind of cutting that road in half, and like, are we gonna see trucks like backing up all the way down to 82?
I mean, there are things you can do with scale configuration to limit traffic backups. So we could put a dual scale system in so that it increases operational
Input, yeah.
flexibility to slow down backups.
And we're currently working on right now a new update to our scale software, which will allow, I'm hoping eventually like RFID tags. So like the trucks that come through all the time, they just zip over the scale and reduce those backups that we see in the summer months.
Do you have?
I mean, I would say, you know, I've hiked that trail from Aspen Downs, you know, and I mean, it looks like a mine. Like it almost looks like the gravel
Right.
pit.
It is
you
kind
know?
of a bind.
Yeah.
But do you have a visual? So you showed us where you can see the pit. So where's the new buildings from Aston Valley
It's
Ranch?
right. So right where Kathy's. Oh, you can't see them from the north. You can't see.
You
them.
can't see them from Aston Valley Ranch.
No,
Behind
this
hill.
view is the only place where there's a visual line of sight to the.
But those are the new buildings on the hillside there.
Yes, but so and the existing one. So the one in the back there is the you would be positive.
Right, but the new ones you can't see from Aston Valley Ranch. I can't. I find that hard to believe.
So this is the scale house, and then what's behind it?
So that would be the materials recovery facility. So like.
Oh, like the
recycling,
shed
yeah.
that's there
Household
now.
hazardous waste, yeah. Motherlode mercantile.
Mother load.
Doesn't seem to me that we have any choice about this. We have to expand our landfill. I mean,
Next.
what's the alternative?
Kathy can address that and the rest of the.
Yeah, this is new from the expansion I thought we'd already approved.
I do think you can, in the visual, you can see the little buildings
Yeah.
from that trail, from Aspen Valley.
That's
Aspen
the one that
Downs.
goes up Dry Woody.
Yeah,
That Dry Woody, that's right there.
Yeah, so just we'll go hit a timeline and estimated costs. So if you're on agreement today, we'll begin discussions with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. We have to crack open the permit, our engineering design operation permit plan again. So we can start those discussions, next month in April. We're expecting about in a year we could get the first draft of our permit submitted to them. Estimated cost is $100,000. That's already built into our engineering contract with Weaver. Hopefully by autumn 2024, the state would give us approval for it. There's a lot of back and forth. It just really depends on the state. They've been a little slow lately getting approvals in and going through that, but we still have time. We can start infrastructure relocation probably in 2026. We're an estimated cost of about $9 million. The south expansion.
That's the horizontal and the vertical work?
Yeah, to move the scale house, to move the MRF building, to
Yeah.
move household
Yeah,
hazardous
the road,
waste,
all
and
of
it. Okay.
reconstruct the road. We're thinking maybe around 2026 that could start. South expansion, again, would be first to go. That's the yellow area. 2027, about a $6 million cost. Again, lining, excavation work, mining out that existing waste that we believe is sitting under the current scale house and the road there. And then the west expansion, which would give us 45 years, about 2050.
You wouldn't even start that until 2050.
Probably not. We'd get it permitted through the state and just have it set and ready to go, but there wouldn't be a need to start constructing that until we were ready.
So that estimated cost in 2050 is like,
8 million.
who
Yeah,
knows?
Probably higher.
Yeah, it would be higher. Those are in today's.
But this gives us, if we do these expansions, 70 to 80 years of landfill airspace. So it'll take care of us for quite a while. Calculating out, and I believe it's really low estimate, it would generate $600 million in revenue with that trash coming in, and that's probably low.
Wow. Yeah, go ahead.
How have we dealt with these costs in our 5-year budget?
Well, that's one thing we're going to work on. So we will put together a more detailed budget estimate of how we're going to build all of this, get it into this year's budget cycle this summer, and start planning on savings and where we're going to get the money from.
Patty?
This is very different from the expansion that I remember approving. I still have definite concerns about internal traffic increase. To have to drive here when you used to drive to where you needed to go, now you're driving over here, and you have to get to where you need to go. So I'm concerned about that. Again, concerned about the curb, because it's not like I'm driving my well, I do drive my Subaru up there a lot, but it's not like, driving a waste hauling vehicle. So I'm concerned about those road safety issues, internal traffic. I didn't see any solar or methane recapture.
Took my
playing
question.
Greg right here. Oh, we're both playing Greg right here. I don't see that in here. We need to bring that in at some point, I believe. If we're advocating that around the county, we need to be the first ones to be doing it, or definitely not the last. I have a lot of questions, but I think this is just a preliminary. I think we need to look at it, but I think those are my concerns moving it forward.
Steve?
So, to the alternatives, I think the long-range solution ultimately is to have a regional landfill with a waste-to-energy type of process, where we're reducing the volume, recycling everything. And that might be 80 years out if we can have our landfill last that long. In the meantime, building a transfer station when neighboring counties do not want us, they do not want Picken County to be taking stuff to their landfills right now, given the political situation in neighboring counties. So I don't think building a transfer station to transfer it to where is an option. Today, maybe in the future it would be, but, and I don't think closing the landfill's not an option. I mean, it would become a transfer station rather than closing it. And I think, well, you have maintaining the diversion programs on the existing space, even though the landfill would close and you'd have a transfer station to take the trash elsewhere to be landfilled. So I think, I mean, I'm okay with doing the expansion because that's the reasonable thing to do now. Long range, I want to find a more permanent solution, which maybe is a societal change in greatly reducing packaging and whatnot. If you can, on the, like, mine as much of the whatever fill you can use for using later for, the daily cover or whatever, that would be good. Because the deeper you could mine the south expansion area, that then increases the airspace for, that would just extend the life of it. So that could be kind of built into somehow scraping, I don't know how, somehow stockpiling that, what is there for future use for daily cover and whatnot. That would be good.
Yeah, with the preliminary design, we tried to minimize cut fill. That was one of the things we attempted to do, and then we will stockpile all that existing material for use in, landfill operations and closure.
Right. So just going back, just to touch on it, we built a transfer station. That gets really expensive for hauling trash. I mean, communities that have had to do that, trash rates double because you're loading it onto semi-trucks and you're hauling it to South Canyon, Garfield County or beyond, so.
Possibly to South Canyon.
Yeah. But, and also Jake pointed out today, even we build a transfer station, we have to go through closure of the landfill. Well, the diversion programs stay, you still have to close that landfill where the fill is permanently, and that's probably, we're estimated right now around $4 million. Right. And then you have to maintain that for at least 30 years.
Oh, God.
So.
Talk about the transfer station a little bit. I don't understand why that, I don't understand that concept, and I don't understand why the cost is so
What
high.
it is, yeah, it becomes a big warehouse building. Communities that have run out of landfill space, they have to do this. It's a big warehouse. Trucks pull in and they back up to pits. There's a surface level pit they dump into, or they dump on the floor. Trucks will run through the pit, fill the semi trucks with trash, and then off they go. They pull out, and it's like a landfill in a building, but it has to move out of sight, off the site by the end of the day.
It's just a little more efficient way of moving the trash. However, from an environmental
Thank you, Brian.
standpoint,
It's a
expanding the landfill is the better move.
Yeah, it's an environmental nightmare. I would never approve sending our waste to somebody else. That is just so irresponsible. And I want to read you a quote from my niece who said, "When we consume so freely, it's our responsibility to discard carefully." So when she said that, I was just like, what did you just say?
And she's at 12?
No, she's not 12.
That's very wise. Yeah.
She's 40-something. But still, it
can't
just
keep
in a
her
light
family straight.
conversation, that was a pretty weighty sentence, I thought.
Yeah.
So I would certainly not obstruct proceeding down this road. I'm kind of surprised that it's not more expensive. I was pretty impressed with those numbers. I imagine they'll change somewhat, but, and especially given that the landfill brings money in. And when you said 600 million, what kind of time period? Forever?
That's over 70 years.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
The
and I
70
believe that's
years.
probably low.
So 100 million a year-ish.
Yeah, I mean, well, 8 million, I've increased it by like 3% every year based on CPI. Just over the course of it would certainly pay for itself, and continue to bring in revenue for the county and the landfill. But going back to Steve's point, and Jake and I were talking this morning, is like, I have a feeling in 20, 30 years, there's going to be a better way to handle waste.
I agree.
Technology is always improving, and just because the CDOP gets approved, the Engineering Design and Operation Plan gets approved through the CDPHE, doesn't mean you can't make changes to it at a later date if, new, better technologies come around. Or that, Kathy would stop looking, for those options. But.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Who does this work? Like, who do you hire to expand the landfill?
Well, last year we went out to bid, Johnson Construction, earth excavation, moving. They brought in a subcontractor that specializes in liner. Weaver Consultants does the engineering on it, and construction, QA/QC, quality control.
Any other questions or comments? Yes,
Yeah,
Steve?
one more. Where the liner is on the edge of the existing landfill, the new liner that you just have put in, as I visualize it, that would actually be part of, we'd be filling in on the south up over that liner.
It's why that west expansion is so much cheaper than like the south expansion, because we'll use those liner systems on both the north and south expansion to increase the vertical extent of where waste can be placed. So the the more you stack these things on top of each other, the more utility you get out of the base liner systems.
So that would actually reduce the cost, because some of the liners already there that would be part of the new
Exactly. Yeah, it
expansion.
allows us to get, we kind of have to keep our side slopes between a 3 and 4 to 1 just for slope stability safety. And so, the more lateral extent we get with those north and south expansions, the more space we can fill. And so.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
When will our next touch point with you be? Budget or?
I think we have discussions with the state, and get their feedback and come back to you with what they said. They may have some things we didn't think of, Jake didn't think of, and come back and say, okay, the state agreed to this, and then we'll touch base in that point.
And I'd like to get answers to the questions here about traffic and circulation and backups, and also come up with a financial plan. I think that's going to be key in the short term to make sure that we can fund the expansion.
Go
One
ahead,
more
Steve.
point.
Are you done? I'm
No,
sorry.
not just I do want to figure out how we explore the methane capture process as well.
So, I'll kick it off. Jake will have
Okay.
to finish. So with our north expansion that was completed last year, we had to go through what's called Tier 1 and Tier 2 testing. And we actually did mathematical modeling of gas generation within the landfill, and then we actually had to come out and do probes and actually test for gas. And we were well below any regulatory requirement. It was like 6 tons of CO2 equivalent emitted every year. The threshold, the regulatory threshold is 36.
What was it's gone up? Well, yeah, it's gone down to 36. You're right.
Yeah, 36
It
tons of
had been
CO2.
50.
So we are well below any trigger to install a landfill gas methane capture system. Even if we wanted to put one in now, there isn't enough gas to generate it to keep it running safely.
It wouldn't operate efficiently. We couldn't get methane that was pure enough to burn to produce energy, and we couldn't get enough vacuum on the wells because there's not enough methane in the landfill to pull off the small quantity that it produces at this point in time.
That sounds like good news.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
but-
Steve has a
Okay,
question.
can I just tag onto the methane real quick?
Sure.
I remember us talking about methane before, and the reason we couldn't do it was because it wasn't set up to do it. So I'm thinking, should we not, the current landfill didn't have this setup to be able, because it wasn't piped, or we couldn't capture the methane from the current structure of the landfill. So I'm thinking that I don't want to say we don't have enough, but maybe there's a way we can plan ahead.
Sure.
So-
So that's kind of what Kathy was getting to. So
Yeah.
that Tier 2 process sort of does a real-time evaluation by measuring the data in the landfill to see if So forget the regulatory part of it. It's sort of a test to see if your landfill could support a methane gas extraction system. So you need a certain amount to get enough vacuum on the vertical wells and the horizontal headers
I
to collect
understand all of
methane.
that, but, you know, technology changes.
Sure.
And I don't want to have to come back, they come back in 5 years after that and say, oh, you know what, you can capture minute amounts and do this, this, and this with it, but you didn't build your structure into your structure.
Yeah, so we're not doing anything from a design perspective that will inhibit that potential, and Kathy will have to go through a tier 2 process, so that test
I
has to
just
occur
don't want to
every
leave
5
that out of
years.
the conversation.
Yeah, and you may be able to answer this because I know in working with a landfill in another county, they went back after and were able to add that infrastructure once the study had showed there was enough density, and that could change to,
Yeah.
to
Right,
your
right,
point,
but
Patty.
we were told we couldn't do it to our old structure. Remember, I have a long history with the landfill.
No, I know. I
So I just want to make sure it's part of the conversation as we
Yeah,
move
so
forward.
nothing that we're doing in this process will inhibit our ability to put in methane gas extraction wells in a system should it become viable at any point in time.
Steve?
So,
Thank you, Steve.
speaking about methane, I think we'd probably be better off putting our efforts towards getting all the organic matter out of the waste stream and composting that. And not having the methane being generated in the future in the new parts we're doing.
Absolutely, and I credit our compost and waste, you know, because we have the second largest compost facility in the state of Colorado. Unbelievably, yeah, we're such a small community. I credit a lot of keeping the food waste out, keeping the organics out, to such a low methane generation.
Yeah, and Aspen's recent
only help.
law change is huge.
Yeah.
about that.
And I had one other thought now. What was it? Well, if I remember it in the next minute, I will bring it up.
We'll give
Well,
you
speaking
two.
of the next minute, I don't know if you're aware that we've been hearing from the
We-
residents in Smuggler
were
ever
gonna
since
talk
the
about
last
it.
time we saw
If we're
you.
going to talk about it, I have to step out, so if you want to bring it up.
I'm just telling Kathy that we will probably be talking about that a little bit at open discussion today.
Okay, can is it okay to update you on my conversation with the state?
I have to
if
step
Patty
out.
leaves.
Okay.
She lives there.
And I'm being hit by this, by the way.
I think Brian must have given you some warning that this was coming.
He did. He's like, I want you to be ready. So on March 8th, as directed from our previous conversation in February, I did have a conversation with Colorado CDPHE, just to follow up again to see if it would be possible to put back into our permit the ability to use smuggler soils as cover dirt. So the conversation with the state, they indicated this is how lead contaminated mine waste soils are handled throughout the state, even down the street from, you know, like where the W Hotel was built, Aspen Music School, Lift 1A is about ready to kick off. It's a hazardous waste. So they have to be equal throughout the state. So they're like, it has to be buried in the trash. Fortunately, it doesn't have to go to a hazardous waste landfill. Because federal regulations have given that bevel waste exemption. It can go to a regular Subtitle D landfill, which we are. And then the reasoning is we can't engineer controls to guarantee that soil, the contaminated soil, doesn't leave the site through wind or stormwater. So they're holding firm that it must be buried in the trash.
Okay, so that's first defeat.
So what has happened since is to possibly look at the smuggler fund, which is in excess of $450,000 right now, and possibly work with Tom Dunlop and Kurt Dahl in creating a subsidy program for low-income folks.
Yeah, great.
We'll be working with Kurt and Tom on that to see if that can work.
And so what's the timeline on that so I can respond to some of the letters that we've gotten then?
I don't have an answer for you. Kurt is on vacation. I was hoping to get a hold of him before today's meeting, but as soon as he's back, it's at the top of my list to make sure that
Okay.
we forward.
Well, and so we probably don't have any jobs pending that we'll be bringing.
There's 2, but I believe that for the moment they're done.
Okay.
They were running in January and February, but I haven't seen them in March yet, so I think they may
Okay,
be done.
so, and And so we don't have any of that earth being excavated right now and coming to the landfill. So we have a little bit of time here before anybody will be impacted by the new fees. Okay.
I proposed June 1st, because you stated 3 months. I had a conversation, we were thinking June 1st, we can raise the fees.
Okay. Okay, Kelly?
Oh, I guess I'm wondering, because this neighborhood's a little quirky in the sense that it is sort of governed by deed restriction, but I don't think totally governed by deed restriction. I think we might want to talk to APSHA about how they deal with those, or if the qualifications that APSHA uses are meaningful at all in figuring out what a appropriate qualification for a subsidy might be as well.
Right. So it's an idea. It's not a simple idea. So we would have to get into it to figure out how to manage it best. And,
Okay. Steve?
Okay, when you said CDPHE, that reminded me of what I wanted to bring up. There are a whole bunch of counties that are fighting CDPHE right now over landfills that were closed years and years ago, and they followed the rules when they did the closures, and now CDPHE has come back at them to spend a whole lot more money doing more stuff than they were required to do when they did the closure. And I'm sure you're aware of this. So at CCI has been working with the counties involved and the state legislature and all that to try to come up with some, hopefully, have CDPHE not coming down so hard on counties that did the proper thing when they were supposed to and now are sort of being penalized for it.
Yeah, and the way I understand it, and I'm familiar with those cases, and they're trying to argue with CDPHE, being that they're municipally or county owned, they shouldn't have to abide by all the strict requirements. Is that kind of your understanding?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I would say that there is a proposed bill in the legislature at the moment.
No, I don't think there is at this point.
No, it's been put to committee that would establish both a fund and a review committee for those circumstances. I don't know that it will pass, but I do know that is currently.
Yeah.
And to put your mind at ease, we are fully in compliance with all the regulations, and our post-closure care fund is up to date.
We're
So
still on
we're
Smuggler.
in good shape.
Patty?
No,
We're still on Smuggler.
No, we're not.
Yes, I have some more questions about
Oh,
Smuggler.
you do?
Oh, sorry.
Jumped in there and changed the subject.
Is there any potential danger that the Aspen dump at the Moore Field will
That's up by
come
the
under
rec
those
center.
regulations and come back to haunt whoever owned it? Maybe, I don't know who owned that actually, if it was us or
I don't
Aspen.
know where that's at in closure post-closure. I mean, so the regulations state that you have to go through 30 years of closure post-closure where you monitor the landfill, test the groundwater, test the gas, and then after that 30-year closure period, the CDPHE says, okay, you're done here, right? And that's sort of the pinch point of these things. I don't know where that particular site is in that process, or if it, went through it.
No, it's probably under the radar of the state. If that property was to be redeveloped, it's over by the rec center, right? Yeah. If they were going to build, then they would probably, whoever bought it or whoever currently owns it would be required to clean that up. Probably as long as nobody touches it and leaves it alone, it'll be fine. But
Okay.
the state sometimes can surprise you, so it'll probably be.
So if we could go back to what you were explaining about what is the next step in terms of the smuggler residents, are you talking about actually the county providing subsidies or waiving fees? Because waiving fees might be easier than providing subsidies. Maybe not, I don't know. But
Yeah, I guess where I was going was to provide subsidies based on we're holding a substantial amount of money in the smuggler fund, and I would want to work with Kurt and Tom Dunlop on that. But to subsidize the fee the increased fee.
So the smuggler fund would then pay the fees for certain residents to move their soil.
Yeah,
But
above,
as you said before, Kathy, I'm sorry, were you going to say more, Brian?
yeah, subsidize above the regular soil tipping fee
Yeah.
to meet the MSW trash fee.
Right. And then you had mentioned that you really are trying to encourage people to reuse their own soil. So once they disturb this soil at Smuggler, can they just put it back down again? So they can be exposed to it, but nobody else. Okay, just clarified what that
Yeah.
actually means.
My understanding at Smuggler in the consent decree that if, as long as it remains on the property and is reused within the property, I don't know if Aspen, the building permit, has to approve something like that, but you're not impacted by any kind of disposal.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Sorry.
Sorry, one more question on that topic. Do we have a record of how many permitted projects have dealt with this soil over, I don't know, a 5 or 10 year period or something, that, like, not just at Smuggler but elsewhere too?
Yeah.
Okay.
We track all that at the landfill through the scale house. And I did pull, I don't have them with me today, but the 10-year numbers, I think we've dealt with like 60-some thousand cubic yards of material over the last 10 years.
From how many projects, do you know?
We average probably about 5 or 6 a year.
Okay.
Last year we only had 1. This year so far we've had 2. So it goes up
So
and
this
down.
is an issue of community concern for sure, in the disposal of this type of waste. It's not just specific to Smuggler. Okay.
Right, and and the big project, recent one, was the W Hotel that was
Yeah.
built. And they brought in, it was like 30,000 cubic yards of soil. It was almost $500,000 or more in soil disposal.
Yeah.
And they
Jeez,
had to
really?
bury it.
They had
But-
to bury it.
It's the same soils, it's the mine waste. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you guys so much.
Well, that's my computer. Before that falls on the other side.
Okay, Linda, we're going to be moving on to the prep for the EOTC meeting on April 6th.
Okay,
Welcome.
thank you. Kayla's gonna help me.
You know, Linda, I'm going to run quickly to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Will you carry on for me for just a second while I go to the bathroom?
Sure.
Just in case something erupts in here.
Okay. I think you can send Patty back in as well.
I think John went to get her.
Okay.
So did it go away?
Looks like the lunch meeting did. Do you still have the agenda up? Yes, right here.
Thank goodness for Michaela. There we go. I usually don't hunt and peck.
And I'll go ahead and promote you to
Screen. There we go. Share.
Patty's just grabbing her computer. Did you guys take a break?
Not formally. So we are on air.
Slideshow.
We're taking an informal 5-minute break, I think, on the air.
Okay, I'll get rid of that.
You can just click right there.
Should we go ahead?
I think we should wait for a quorum of 3. Thank you. How are you settling in? Yeah. Will this be your second EOTC meeting?
It will,
Yeah.
but I didn't really
The
run
first that you
one.
ran the first. Yeah, okay.
So it will be technically the first. The
Great.
first for 2023.
Yeah,
With some new, 2 new people in Snowmass,
right.
2 new members
That's
there.
true.
Our new Aspen members won't come on until the week after.
Right.
After, yeah.
So, yeah.
It was Britta, and who else was new?
Susan Marolt?
Susan Merle, right. Great.
All right, I think we'll just carry on. Apparently Patty went to get her computer or something, I'm not sure.
Okay.
All righty. This is on, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I can tell because it's coming through my hearing aid.
Good afternoon, Linda Dupriest, Regional Transportation Director, EOTC, and
Brian Pettit, I'm the Public Works Director.
and we're here just to do a quick background prep before the first EOTC meeting on next Thursday on April 6th. The meeting is here at Pitkin County. It's virtual and in person, and Madam Chair, you will be the chair of the whole meeting. I'll bring you roll call sheets for all of the jurisdictions for that. We're just going to approve the decisions reached from October 27th, which were pretty much just approving the work plan and budget for 2023. We've got, and then 2 fairly short, we think, agenda items. Yes, and you all should have gotten your link with your unique Zoom link if you are going to be zooming into the meeting.
Yes, I think we did.
Okay, good. So, yes, well, the decisions reached will just be the approval of the budget and the work plan from October 27th. Then we're going to have a presentation from Warner Transportation Consultants, Mark Warner, who the EOTC hired to do a regional transit system analysis for Snowmass Village. That project was part of the near-term transit improvement program that was initiated in 2021, and that consultant was brought on in 2022. He created an initial report in July, which looked at these four or five different aspects of transit up in Snowmass. One of them, the third bullet, which was to look at more direct bus service between Snowmass and Down Valley communities. He made a recommendation for that, and RAFTA actually has implemented a couple of new bus services for that. Then some of
Without the changing buses at Brush Creek.
right, direct means that the bus still stops at Brush Creek, but nobody has to make a change. So that was implemented. And then Snowmass requested, the transportation director there requested that we use the remaining $23,000 of that contract to have them look at enhanced summer direct service between Aspen and Snowmass. Mark has just completed that work, and will discuss that with us next week. He's still working with RAFTA on getting a cost estimate for that. His analysis was that Snowmass could add at least one, or that his recommendation is to add at least one more bus direct between Aspen and Snowmass with a stop at Brush Creek, but not a transfer. So we expect to have that, and we are very much hoping that RAFTA can put together a cost estimate for that before next Thursday when we hear from Mark. So anyway, we'll be hearing all of the different things he looked at up in Snowmass. And then we have 4 items on the 2023 work plan to talk about. The first project, and it was another one of your choices in the near-term transit improvement program that looked at the bus stops around the Buttermilk ski area and the intersection there, starting at Harmony Drive and then Owl Creek Road. And the two things that this project looked at is the Buttermilk pedestrian bicycle crossing. So SGM, we've hired them to do an analysis on the feasibility of doing an overpass or an underpass. Coupled with that was this transit signal bypass idea that would have, the idea was to create sort of a channel for buses coming from the Down Valley direction and allow them to not have to stop at the Harmony Drive intersection.
Is that your drive? Is that your road?
And then also to be able to bypass Owl Creek Road in certain signal phases, not all of them. And the project team that looked at that, plus the technical advisory team, decided after some analysis that it wasn't going to work. There were big safety concerns with how we would channel those buses through there. And then, of course, the right-hand turn that goes over to turn south onto Owl Creek Road was going to be a problem. And even without that sort of safety discomfort, it didn't look like it was going to deliver that much time savings for the buses. So that project's basically been abandoned upon the recommendation from the team and from the staff. But you'll get a full report on that at the June 29th EOTC meeting, along with the findings from the Buttermilk crossing study, which is still underway.
That's for the underpass.
The underpass or overpass. We just got an initial report from SGM on that with some cost estimates, which are substantial. And we're doing the last bit of the public outreach on that in the next couple of weeks. We're doing some pop-up projects and social media and, email and website.
I have a couple of questions. So at one point we had talked about having a down valley lane on the right for cars so they wouldn't have to stop at Owl Creek, that they would just be able to keep going. What's up with that?
That was part of this project.
remember that.
I don't remember, yeah.
The signal bypass was strictly for RAFTA.
It was just for RAFTA?
Yes.
Just for
Oh, I
buses.
thought it was for
Correct.
down valley traffic.
No, it was just for RAFTA.
Why don't we do a down valley traffic like that?
Well, traffic would need to stop for traffic coming out of Owl Creek Road.
If they turned into the left lane and the down valley traffic was strictly in the right lane,
What about pedestrians?
well, not counting the pedestrian crossing, I'm assuming it would sort of.
Yeah. There's not the capacity on the highway to have free-flowing traffic through intersections, just as a general statement. So I'm not understanding for sure what you're talking about in this area.
I guess I misunderstood when it was presented last year at some point. I thought it was, I guess maybe it was related to the busing that you were just talking about, and I had, yeah.
It was the buses. Yeah, when Owl Creek Road signal turns green, the highway has to stop in all directions.
And people blow through the Harmony light all the time.
They do.
Oh my God, there's accidents there fairly frequently. They just don't see it. I think once they've seen the Owl Creek light turn, they just see past the Harmony Road. There's been.
And that's the reason why the state has a regulation of distance between signals, which it violates in that section, when they should have put Harmony Road entrance at the Owl Creek intersection.
They definitely
I
should
still
have
wish
put.
they would do that.
I don't
right
know
through
why we
Maroon
don't.
Creek tennis
Should have
courts.
asked Governor Owens.
know.
Was it Owens at the time?
I mean, really,
You can move
they
tennis
should
courts,
be
right?
the same. It's
Governor Owens
crazy.
played golf at the Maroon Creek Club that week, and the decision changed.
Oh, my goodness.
I wonder if there's any way we can look at that again, because that is just like.
They put
Of course,
housing in
it's
between there.
It's like
Yeah, you could
insane
close
that
off
it's
that
not
whole
one light.
road that goes over there, and I don't know. Anyway,
Well, in any case.
We have big ambitions over here.
Good recovery, Linda.
We have a whole bunch of engineers sitting here.
No, we love it. We love it. We love collaboration.
I'm the political engineer. I know what happened with the governor playing golf. Right, Brian? We knew that day.
But this signal bypass piece was part of this whole study that Mead and Hunt did that looked at a lot of incremental changes along the whole corridor, and they looked at it at this level, and then we brought some folks in to look at it at a much higher level and more detail, and that's when we just went, we're all bending ourselves into pretzels to try to make it work, and we just decided it wasn't going to work. So
Well, the bus coming in is so much faster than the traffic that it does seem like it would be overkill to spend a lot of time worrying about saving 2 minutes on the bus or something.
At that, when you're going upbound on the bus, at
When you're
the,
coming into Aspen, the
Yeah,
bus is
yeah.
pretty darn quick.
can I ask a question?
Of course.
I don't know if Brian might know. We were talking about the pedestrian bike path from Owl Creek up valley to the Maroon Creek underpass.
Mhm.
Are we still looking at that?
yeah, that's the Truscott underpass to Owl Creek Road trail, and that's still in design, or preliminary alignment in design, and we're going to have a report on that in June.
Thank you.
Yep, for sure.
That's going really well.
Thank you.
That's going really well.
So it'd be great to have it before 2026.
Yes.
I think we can do that. We'll work
Yes. Brush Creek Park and Ride update. That's moving forward. We expect to have the construction starting around May 1. The project finally, after all of the little pieces of it have been figured out with the funding on the Fed's end and our end, is the expanding the parking area by 200 spaces, improving that whole parking lot and putting in lighting, and then the EV charging infrastructure and a portion of the bus turnaround lane. So that's on schedule and that's moving forward. So
Before 2026.
in about 6 weeks.
Yeah, you're ahead of my bike path, the
After
Brush
the
Creek,
snow melts.
which
After
could be
the snow melts.
2026.
Assuming the snow melts by May 1st.
So these next two items are the first is our we began to work on the HOV lane enforcement project where y'all had allotted $95,000 to do some overtime, hire some officers overtime to look at enforcing the HOV lane between Basalt and the airport. And our first step brought us into a legal snag that Brian's going to explain.
Well, it's just the nexus between transit-oriented projects and HOV lane enforcement didn't pass our legal review from our county attorney. So John Ely said it wouldn't be an appropriate use of EOTC funds to enforce the HOV lane. There's not,
Really? Why not?
there's not a transit nexus for that expenditure.
What does that mean?
The EOTC funds have to be spent on enhancing transit operations, and his opinion was that.
You mean public transit?
Public
Correct.
transportation.
Yeah.
Well, you can't
that-
say that the enforcement of the HOV lane, which is kind of designated for buses, does it? I'll talk to the county attorney's office.
Okay, so that was, so we were just doing.
You told Patty she can do whatever she wants, so.
And I still haven't been able to do that.
In completing our due diligence, that was the opinion from the county attorney, and that's who we have to go with from a legal standpoint when it comes to appropriate expenditure of public funds.
I'll find a nexus.
Steve?
So I have a big smile on my face
You do?
because I am one of those who, when it's often dangerous to drive in the left lane and follow the HOV rules. You're taking your life in your hands. If you're driving the speed limit in the left lane, you are taking your life in your hand during those 3 hours a day. You're better off being in the right lane, going the speed limit, and let all the people going 65 and 70 just go by you on the left side. That's the only safe way to do it. So I'm smiling because I don't like the HOV lane from Brush Creek to Basalt.
You don't want to get busted driving in the HOV lane. You don't want enforcement.
But the fact
don't want
is,
enforcement,
it's
no.
the law, guys. It happens to be the law. And unless we reopen the record of decision and change it, it is still the law, as is a speed limit a law.
You know, and the speed limit's
It's
not being
easier to
enforced
change,
either,
yeah.
so.
So we need to find $95,000 somewhere else.
Well, I think there's a discussion that needs to happen, and this is just me speaking, about the efficacy of the HOV lane in this area. I think that's where this discussion needs to go. I don't know that EOTC is the venue in which to have it, but we could certainly have it at a county level.
Makes Steve happy, even happier.
Well, and I know we always had this discussion about reopening the record of decision when Rachel was commissioner, and she was always opposed to doing that.
She still is.
And she still is. For one more meeting, she can be officially opposed to it. But
We did
anyhow, I
at our
think
prep
we
meeting
should
last
have
night,
that
she,
discussion about reopening the record of decision at some point. 'Cause there's more than just that. There's other things that
Yeah.
we could improve by taking another look at it and kind of updating the record of
I
decision.
agree.
Well, it's an odd duck as far as HOV lanes go in the country and even in Colorado. Every other HOV lane in Colorado now is at least 3 people in a car, and they're never on the right side of the road. And there's only one other in the whole state that's in a 2-lane configuration where drivers don't have a third choice. So it's an imperfect HOV lane, to say the least.
So I think what we're wanting to do is remove it from the EOTC agenda, and if we want to have a discussion with the board about efficacy or safety, frankly, of the current HOV configuration, we can do that. But according to John Ely, it's inappropriate for EOTC expenditures.
Well, the down valley traffic has some pretty weird patterns in it. Like, once you get past the airport and go to Basalt, there's almost never traffic problems down valley. But between Basalt and Elgibel is terrible. So it's just weird how that happens. I just don't understand it. So the HOV lane doesn't really affect anybody in that section. It's just the traffic just moves there. So strange.
Right, and if I may,
Please do.
I'd like to. Steve's talking about the safety problems, and I lived through non-HOV and HOV and now non-enforcement of HOV. And I can tell you when the HOV lane was being enforced, when it was first installed, CSP was consistently enforcing it. It was a much more dangerous situation because of the differential in speeds. So a car would get locked behind a concrete truck going 30 miles an hour while the other lane's flying by, and they would have to try to merge into traffic to get around the concrete truck. Because I remember Michael Owsley at maybe this table saying, do you want to be the sap that just sits behind a concrete truck going up the valley, or are you going to spin into the HOV lane to travel? And now, as people have adjusted to this non-enforcement configuration, it's safer. Frankly, it's safer because speeds are more consistent, even though they're excessive going down valley. Safety problems happen on highways when there's speed differential. And the HOV lane artificially put in speed differential between speeds. So,
It's my experience that the speeding is more of a problem up valley than down valley. People trying to get to work on time. And then it's really something. Snowmass Canyon all the way to the airport. And west of Snowmass Canyon too. It's unbelievable how fast people drive.
Well, and I don't want to let Steve hang out there like he's the only one breaking the law, because I do it all the time. I just set my cruise control at like 62 and, stay in the right lane.
I'll
Really?
set mine at
I'm-
59, so I'm 4 over. I will not set it at 60.
Well, I
Thank you
I'm
guys are
never
the only
going
ones
to HOV
driving that
lane during
slowly.
those hours.
I know, it's fast,
I
it's
guess I'm too
scary.
paranoid. I never violate that. I look at my clock to make sure I'm not in that time zone. Interesting.
She's at 3 minutes to 3 in the afternoon when she goes home.
Okay, so the next project, our dynamic road pricing project, and I know we all know what that is.
I don't remember what that is.
Okay, dynamic road pricing is a general term to describe anytime you put a price on someone driving on the road, either in a toll lane, which can be a an HOV toll lane, or just a toll lane to pay for the road, which we have all over this country. It can also be congestion pricing, where a lane of a multi-lane roadway, if people can choose to drive in it and pay to drive in it, and the price goes up as the road gets more congested, and that's all measured with technology. That's called a managed lane. And then also we have cordon pricing, which is where a zone is created, usually around a central business district, and anybody driving a car into that area is charged a fee.
Okay, thank you.
The most famous example of that is Stockholm, Singapore, London. It's very successful. It reduces single occupancy driving significantly. And it's now being worked out in New York City, just in Lower Manhattan. And it's been proposed in the Boston area. And it was an idea that came out of the Community Mobility Task Force that was initiated by the Aspen Institute in this community in 2017. Followed up by a report in 2021, the Integrated Mobility Study. And then you all, after your retreat, I believe in 2022, approved to put it on the work plan to continue studying it for Aspen. That was all approved on October 27th. And then in November, the city of Aspen announced that it was embarking on its Newcastle Creek Bridge entrance to Aspen study. We feel, our staff, our EOTC staff, feels that until we know what our infrastructure is going to look like coming into Aspen, that studying this would have to be restudied after we know for sure that we're going to have a dedicated bus lane all the way into town with the straight shot, or if Cemetery Lane's going to be disconnected from 82, where it's being proposed. So we just feel that until we know what our infrastructure is going to look like, that it would be a waste of funds to study this any further at this time. So we're recommending that we delay it until the ETA is determined.
So 2026 or 2050?
I think that's pretty wise.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
We also are all coming to really understand with RAFTA's driver shortage, which we don't know how long that's going to continue, the housing challenges of housing transit employees, that we're not sure. We would have to really be serious about enhancing transit service significantly in order to offset those trips if people had to, pay a toll to come into Aspen. So that's another future unknown.
Yeah. We will have 42 units for drivers in October. I think they're hoping September, October.
Right, the
The place
hotel
in
in Glenwood.
That's
So things could get a whole lot better there.
That'll help.
So anyway,
Tolling existing capacity on highways is a challenge.
Yeah.
And the legislature for the state of Colorado would need to change from allowing that legally right now. You can toll additional capacity, but you cannot legally toll existing capacity.
What? You said you can toll.
Additional
new lane.
capacity.
You put in a new
you can add a new
lanes.
lane.
I see.
So like
Yeah.
if, when you're coming out of Denver, there are toll lanes there. I think
Those
to
are new
toll
lanes.
existing capacity is more of a legal challenge.
Yeah, they start all the way up by,
Idaho Springs.
where is that? The turnoff to Winter Park?
Highway 40, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Bertha Pass.
Yeah, the turnoff to Winter Park, yeah.
What's the legal barrier? Whose legal barrier?
It's a state law. So, and in the integrated mobility study, the consultant that the EOTC hired, it was Fair and Peers. They did that research at the state level, and we would have to pass a state law, which is not impossible. Those things are done all the time to improve transportation in different
Yeah.
ways, but and it could be there's some other part of Colorado that wants to try it. Maybe Boulder, I don't know. But we would be initiating the changing of a state law to do that.
We do that sometimes. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, right.
And I think the social equity is an issue with charging.
The equity piece and just the whole discussion of how you decide who should pay. You know, some folks would say, well, only people driving in should pay, but really in London, anybody who's driving during peak hour, even if they live there and they have to drive into the zone to go to the pharmacy or something, they're paying. So the burden is shared by everybody who is choosing to drive during peak hour or whenever that cordon is set. But those are very difficult community conversations, which would be happening at the same time as the ETA. Could be interesting. So anyway, that is all we have for Tuesday.
That is the
Thursday.
fastest debrief we've had for TC meeting since I came on the board. Well done.
One thing in our prep meeting yesterday with the city of Aspen, Mayor Torre is asked if we could discuss further the Brush Creek Park and Ride project and how we're going to manage the parking while the parking lot is closed. So he asked myself and Pete Rice from the city of Aspen to bring back some more information about that. So we're going to work on that.
Okay, great. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
you, Linda.
Thank you. You too.
Wait, and Greg would want to know where the food truck's going to go during the construction.
Says they have a
Still
little
gonna be
place
there.
set aside
I
for it.
wanna know.
I know. Buttermilk, I think we were thinking about putting a food truck.
More on that later.
And that takes us to review of future agendas. That's all
All
you,
right.
John.
Thanks, Francie. So, a few things for you today. First, the follow-up STR meeting in Redstone has been set for Thursday, May 18th. It'll be from 5:30 to 7. We pushed it into the evening to accommodate some of the requests from residents to make sure we had a time that those who were working in the valley and such could attend, and that will be at the Redstone Church. While we're on STRs, Francie had brought up that we had committed to a one-year review, which staff is working on. The question that came up that I think is worth some discussion, the board adopted the STR ordinance in June, but it was not implemented until September. You remember we had that time frame. Staff feels, in talking to our staff working with short-term rentals, that we're going to have a lot of key learnings over the summer, in particular in terms of implementation. But wanted to get some feedback from the board about timing of that review. If we do it in June, we won't have the benefit necessarily of having gone through the summer season. We'll have about 9 months of experience implementing. I know a lot of you are getting phone calls and that sort of thing too. If we do it in September, we'll have the full year run of having implemented it, been through the summer season, and be able to bring that information to the table. And so staff could obviously do either. So I wanted to get some feedback from you all about that review. And the goal of that review, I think, is to both talk about our key learnings, implementing the program and what we're hearing about the STR program, and then to recommend any changes to the ordinance as follow-up. So,
Any comments, Steve?
In terms of the STR rules for rural and remote, I would rather move that forward sooner than later, before September.
Oh, yeah, that's coming.
that's going to be coming in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the Redstone thing we might not have that worked out, but there are different issues still coming up that we're still learning from at this point, and sort of maybe doing partial fixes to them administratively. But at the end of a full year, I think at that point, we'd have a lot more experience than we do even now, because stuff is still popping up, that problems or issues that we haven't figured out yet, and I think we're still learning, so I wouldn't mind waiting till September for doing that.
Anybody else?
I agree with how Steve summarized the timing. I think it's appropriate.
I felt that the idea was to review it after a year after we passed the ordinance, but I'm willing to wait. I just get a lot of stuff from people who would like things to be changed sooner than a year, but I understand where the staff is coming from.
Yeah, one other thought, you know, if we're looking at the rural and remote thing in April, if there's any other thing that we realize we have to change this, why don't we change other things in April also? I don't know if anything else is as far along though as our
Yeah, I think
discussion
it's
on
so
the-
separate, the R&R question is so separate, I think, that
Yeah,
we might want to isolate it.
Definitely separate.
and I mean, nothing, the Redstone thing, we haven't decided yet, the changes there.
I agree.
And I would also note for the board, I think the growth committee, as their recommendations come forward, are also going to have recommendations around STRs. And so I think you're going to be getting a lot of feedback. And again, I don't think there's a lot of consensus in the community about what that feedback's going to
Yeah.
be.
I agree with that. Okay, so
Okay.
we'll wait.
Other thing, last meeting, y'all asked us to get a time for George Newman to come in front of you on the Hunter Creek Historic Cabins. That's scheduled for April 18th.
Does he know that?
Yes, he does know that.
Oh, I was just wondering whether I
Yeah,
should
yeah,
contact him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to make a joke there, but yeah.
It's okay to joke.
He's gonna be on a
I
big
try to do it as
bicycle
often
trip
as I
right
possibly
then, he
can.
probably won't be available.
And then the other thing we had talked about last time was the possibility of moving our joint meeting with City of Aspen. There were some reasons that actually that was scheduled for the 4th, so that the city has us calendared for that, and I think intend to move forward then with the meeting on the 4th, and then what the topics that we had talked about previously, as I had outlined in the previous meeting, is that we had talked about this meeting being an update on our retreat conversation. So that would be reviewing kind of the Big Rocks conversation, what's happening with the jail and housing, airport. We're anticipating getting a lot of, and that's what the city asked for us to present. And then the city has a new organic waste policy that they're wanting to present, and then a roundtable. The future, though, I think that the ask is for a bigger meeting this summer, probably in July, to do more of a half or full day kind of conversation around housing and planning. And that would be with the new council after they've had a chance to get oriented and such.
Will we see stuff from Phillips before then? Where we're
But
going
before
next
this
on
summer?
Phillips?
Oh, yeah. Not before next Tuesday, but yeah.
No,
yeah,
yeah, but
absolutely.
before our summer meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
So-
Yeah, hopefully we will have some direction from you all about where we're going.
Great. Yes, Patty?
I'm sorry, but it makes no sense for us to be presenting to a council that's gonna change in a week. But, that being said, there seems to be some urgency on the city side So hopefully they'll invite their new council members to attend that meeting, so we don't have to meet with them 2 weeks later and bring them up to speed.
Yeah, I think that is the intent, Patty. I don't know if they'll be there or not.
Because,
Could you put in a request for them to be there?
yeah, I mean, that would make sense, because we really want to update the incoming council to, because it's a matter of 2 weeks. The next one was tentatively planned for like the 25th.
Yeah, and I think some of the timing had to do with availability of city staff and such too. So
I'm sorry, but, okay, never mind. That would be great if they could attend. That would make better sense than us having to speak to a council who won't be a council in 2 weeks. Okay.
I mean, they could at least be introduced. We could say hello, and then if they wanted to stay for the meeting, great. Would be really smart if they did. But,
Or they could watch
so
it
will
later.
you take that up with Sarah? Or?
yeah. And then that is all I have on future agendas.
Does anybody else have anything on future?
No, that was gonna be my question, is the joint meeting with the city, but,
That's why it's still on the future agendas that way.
okay.
I have something, Francie.
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
wondering if our meeting with the CJCC is scheduled for enough time. It's only for an hour.
Oh, we may want to, yeah, we can look at that and increasing that, Kelly. The piece that we're really going over is the report from the jail tours and such, which is fairly short. So we thought that may be a shorter conversation, but we can look at expanding that. But that is set for April 25th. I believe the sheriff will be joining us remotely on that, and otherwise it'll be staff.
Oh, that's too bad.
From Palm
Is
Springs?
Alan gonna be there? That's,
Alan is not going to be at this one. Yeah,
Oh, that's
he
right.
was not available, but we would have had to push it out further, and we felt like we can move
so
forward.
Alan won't be there and Michael won't be there?
Michael will be joining virtually. It's either that or push it out again.
Is somebody
and-
gonna report in Alan's place?
Staff is going to take on the reporting responsibility.
Will Alex be available in person?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good.
I do think we need more time. I mean,
I agree.
even though the report might be short, there's like
Okay.
some meaty things that this board has not had any chance to chew over, you
Okay.
know? And just given our prior conversations, which I feel like ran way over, we should
Yeah.
just plan better
Can-
for
can-
that.
Can I request something? The last meeting, for some reason, when the consultants were here, we didn't get the packet information until the meeting. Can we have that, whatever it might be, so we have time to, we get that ahead of time? Whatever is available ahead of time would be great, I think. Oh, and I have another question.
Okay.
John, when, and Kelly maybe knows, when are we gonna be bringing forward the possibility, the thought process of a ballot question?
Yeah, so actually is working on that.
Really?
Yeah, and so staff is finalizing some recommendations based on our retreat discussion, and so we're going to find a time in April for that. We haven't set the date yet.
When do we have to submit a notice of intent? June?
June.
I think it's June, you have to just say, we're thinking about putting a question on.
That's
Don't
correct.
have to have the wording or anything yet.
Not till
No,
August
the language doesn't. You probably know this better than I do, Kelly, but the
60 days before the election.
yeah.
That's when your language has to be submitted.
So it's in September.
Okay.
But of course, we would want to have some board direction on
Some
question
thought
and such right
process.
now. So I believe staff is meeting on it. We're trying to get our meeting together. My schedule, frankly, has been a little bit of a problem for folks. And then we'll be bringing recommendations and questions forward to the board so we can get direction.
Great,
That'd be
thanks.
great. Thanks for that, Patty.
I had a little earlier hint that might be coming forward.
We discussed it recently. Okay, so I think we're ready for open discussion. Mine was the smuggler thing, but sounds like we can put that to rest for a little while. Anybody else have open discussion? Yeah, Steve.
So I've had a request from the Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus, who has decided to pursue a dark skies initiative for the caucus area. And they have paid $250 to the organization to get on a study. It's actually a couple of years long study process that they have to go through to have the community reviewed. And they have asked if we would consider sending a letter of support for their application. And they did receive a letter of support from the Roaring Fork Audubon group. There's a guy in Paonia who I think is, I don't know if he's the statewide coordinator for the Dark Skies Initiative, but he's supporting this effort. I think there's some indication that some of the other caucus groups in the county would entertain also joining in the effort. And Molly said that there's indication that that the Pickens County lighting ordinances are being under review at this point, and that could be part of the whole process of looking at, the whole county looking at being part of the Dark Skies Initiative. And so one of the things I discovered looking at the packet that Molly forwarded to me today was that April 15th to 22nd is International Dark Sky Week, so coming up in just a couple of weeks. I doubt if we could come up with a resolution or something at that time that quickly, but maybe during that week we could actually have a work session item on the Dark Skies Initiative with somebody from ComDev being present to talk about the lighting ordinance potentially, and they have asked us for a letter of support just to officially present to the organization. I thought it might be better if we had more of a discussion, because if we were going to make it a little broader thing than just one caucus area, it would be better to, I think, do that sooner than later. Would give probably more, a bigger impact by, having a bigger area apply for it than just a smaller caucus area.
Patty?
I thought we already did this years ago. Dorothea Ferris would be the person on record, because I think she brought it forward to the board years ago.
To be designated dark skies.
Dark skies, yeah. So could we, before we reinvent the wheel, can we follow up on that? Maybe it would just take a call to Dorothea or somebody.
What does it actually mean? Does it affect the lighting code? Does it affect having certain days where you turn off the lights off? Or does it mean always you can't have lights on after 9? Or what does it actually mean?
When a community gets designated, and there were 4 communities in Colorado which have been picked for kind of a pilot project right now. One of them, I think, was actually in Westcliff, was one of the communities that was picked. I don't remember the other 4 who applied for and got accepted for this. So that kind of a study is going on now, but the communities, I think, have to meet a certain parameters for being accepted into it. I think you already have to have fairly dark skies to begin with, have some kind of a lighting ordinance, and if we're making the lighting ordinance better or enforcing it, or any kind of efforts the community is doing, it could include just educational, every year doing educational things promoting dark skies and people using less outdoor lighting. It's all part of the process. So it doesn't mean you have to turn off all your lights in the whole community totally, but you're making an effort to work towards improving the outdoor lighting and making it darker. And I don't know a huge amount about it at this point, but that's why I was thinking, you know, maybe having a work session on it and finding out more information. And Molly just gave me this one packet this morning, and I could get it forwarded to everybody so you can see the information.
What were you gonna say, John, about it?
I'll have to check in with staff. I do remember the conversation happening. I can't remember if we got designation.
This was
Yeah.
before you.
Oh, this was before my time. I think we've had it since I've been here
We
too.
did bring it
so-
up, and we brought up the fact we thought we already were.
Okay.
And so we just need to follow up. And the other thing, I didn't know we were redoing our lighting code.
Well, there are very specific, I know that when we build our house, the little lights that we have on the, it's kind of conflicting, because you have to have a light next to every door.
Well, they
but
have to be
then
downcast.
They have to be, smoky glass.
Well, there's safety issues, but we have one of the strictest lighting codes when we created it in the region, if not the state, already, which may be an easy qualifier for us. But I think, John, if we look at the past history, Leslie Lamont might know too, because she was on the board at it's way back. But I know
Okay.
we talked about it, but.
I mean, I'd be curious for the enforcement provisions, because, you know, quite honestly, it's been driving me crazy, all the Christmas tree lights that are still on in
Aspen Valley Ranch?
Starwood and, yep, and Woody Creek, and, I mean, you just drive up 82.
Vale,
it's
all of
just-
Vale.
Well, I don't care about Vale, but I'm
Well, you
sick of looking
care.
them right above my house, you know, because they shouldn't be on, and they're on year round, and there's, you know, my understanding is it's just a code enforcement issue where they have to be, you know, someone has to tell enforcement to go out and
Exactly.
enforce on it. Which is not easy to do for properties that are behind gates, you know, it's, so I don't know. So
Yes.
I'd love to know what because I think it's great. I wish our community did better on these lines. But I don't know, you know, practically how we would make, meaningful change. That's what I would like to
Well,
understand.
part of the reason Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus is taking this up is there are some really annoying and dangerous lights up there along Capitol Creek Road.
I was gonna ask you that, so.
There's one from a house that's actually in the upper Snowmass Creek Caucus area, which this one the Lazy O subdivision was put in their caucus area
the
instead of
Lazy O.
ours. And there's one light that is shining right in your eyes when you're driving up the road. It's
Oh,
a
really?
safety issue. And there have been at least one house, a county official went by and they, you know, gave them a letter saying they had to turn their Christmas tree lights off, which were really obnoxious, but there are
At a
issues
certain
up
time
there.
of year, or a certain time of night, or?
Christmas tree lights, holiday lights can only be a certain time from around certain holidays, before and
Yeah.
after. And they have to be turned off. And they're supposed to only be from this hour to this hour. People set them on timers. I work at a place that installs outdoor Christmas tree
Oh,
lights.
yeah.
So that's there. The other thing from what Steve's saying, it's enforcement. If you do a dark sky designation, you still have to enforce it. So are we being overly redundant here? Would it give us any further teeth in the matter if we were dark sky? Or maybe we just need to look at our own code, so again, I didn't think we were updating, John, but who,
This is just what I heard
yeah.
by way of the caucus, that I think they had been talking to somebody in ComDev about it.
Yeah, that's news to me, because we have one of the strictest lighting codes
Yeah.
around.
Also, I'm not
enforcement, like Kelly
surprised the
said.
Roaring Fork Audubon group is supporting this, because the night lighting is one thing that messes up migratory birds' navigation systems.
They need it, or they don't need it?
No, they don't need
Don't
it.
need it.
Yeah, the excessive lighting over some, you know, big cities and whatnot are, you know, honking up some birds' migration systems, and I think
Did you say
leading.
honking up, like as in geese?
Honking like in geese, yeah.
So who are the enforcers? Are they people from ComDev?
Yes.
Same people who red flag jobs for whatever.
I think would be the code enforcement person would be.
So do they need to receive a complaint before they go to enforce something?
Yeah, we're
Usually.
complaining.
Or if
Kelly,
they
you
see
need
it
to file a
themselves.
complaint.
I've thought about driving around and like collecting addresses. Honestly.
Well, I have to tell you, they always knew when I was coming home from Northwest COG meetings or meetings late, because the next day I'd have a list. And it was usually coming through that corridor by the landfill on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
And Starwood, but yeah, and but that would be the same thing with the Dark Sky Initiative, you'd still have to have enforcement.
So what have we decided? Where are we? What are we doing?
I'd like to see
Are
the
we-
history first and see if we already are, or where we
So
were
are
in
you
that
gonna
process.
check that, or are you asking John?
I'm writing an email right now, so to ComDev, I'll see what I can find.
John's writing an email right now.
Thank you, John.
And I
John.
do remember I looked on a website, which I think listed the communities in Colorado which have been designated dark sky communities, and Pickens County wasn't on that list.
We were
The
in
list that I
yeah,
saw,
we were in
but-
the process of some sort,
Yeah.
and if not, we can call Dorothea, because I think she was the one that brought it forward. If memory serves me correctly.
Okay, well, are there any other open discussion items?
Well, a minor thing, but right now is the National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic
I was wondering, I saw.
is going on, and we have, it's my older sister's husband's son is a veteran. He's a retired colonel from the Air Force. He lives in Ogden, Utah. He is here teaching cross-country skiing with about 15 veterans, and he stayed at our house for a couple of nights. So it was the first time we actually ever got to meet him. And so he stayed with us, and now he's up at Snowmass Village. But I just wanted to make everybody aware that's going on, and I think it's a really good program that has been happening for years. And if you see lots of people in wheelchairs or various things going around, I think especially in Snowmass Village area where they're doing most of the activities, but
I saw the buses, I think they might have been at the Hickory House. They usually do a dinner there for them.
and we went, when I was still driving Village Shuttle, we actually took a group to the Glenwood Springs Hot
Hot
Pool.
Springs.
And also to the Elks Lodge in Glenwood for a lunch there that they put on for them.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, well, thanks for that, Steve. We'll take a break then. We're gonna take how long do you guys want? Should we
On
come
our
back at
next-
3?
Yeah, with
Well-
All
three.
right, we'll be
We-
back at 3.
we have-
Grassroots, we'll be
we
back
have-
at 3.
Well, we have two people here who I think are here
No, we're right on time.
for interviews, but yeah, we are on
Yeah.
time.
And we don't have Charlotte.
We need Charlotte.
Yeah.
We need Charlotte, okay.
Welcome back to the Pickens County Board of Commissioners work session on Tuesday, March 28th. We are going to be treated with interviews with volunteers for our boards. So, thank you, Charlotte.
You can come on up.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
We are going to be interviewing Marianne Maza Pitt for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we just learned late last week that Monty Thompson has resigned from P&Z. So we have 2 renewals, which you've already interviewed. And now we have, Chelsea Clark is going to be interviewed today. So anyway, Marianne is a new applicant. I do want to mention that P&Z is because of Monty's resignation. They are asking that their board be a little more involved and try to have a longer application process. So I think Suzanne and Ellen are working with their board to possibly extend the time for new applicants. But anyway, Marianne is here today with you.
Let me just clarify. So we have 3 openings now?
No, there's only 1 vacancy, and that's because of Monty's resignation.
And
We
how
have
many
2 renewals.
2
And,
renewals.
and so how many applicants do we have for the 1 vacancy?
1
Okay.
right now.
Thank you.
Yes.
But the vacancy is new, and I think that's what we wanted to make sure that
It-
folks understand.
Yeah, so it's all a little bit different than
Yeah.
it was when we last talked about this.
Correct.
Oh, welcome, Marianne.
Hi, well,
Why
thank
don't you
you.
tell us about your interest in planning and zoning?
Absolutely, yes. Well, thank you all for showing up and being here today, and thanks for helping set this up, Charlotte. Yeah, so I've lived in Aspen for 8 years now, and I've been, involved in the community in various ways, from real estate to athletics to, odd jobs here and there as well. I have a big affinity and passion for all the outdoor activities that Aspen offers, from skiing to cross-country skiing to, hiking and biking to the bells and everything of that nature. I was recently coaching the high school boys basketball team, the freshmen, as one of the 2 coaches. And, I've coached soccer here and in college and played abroad as well. So, I've got quite a broad spectrum, I guess, of everything. And I always am kind of a thinker, so I'm always, my brain's constantly turning and trying to learn and understand all of the content and information. And, living here for many years now, I've gotten quite a good broad understanding of everything from history to film to, skiing, etc. And with all of that knowledge, I would, wish to basically kind of take on a potential position to assist, the local community as best as possible. I'm also, very good at listening and trying to hear everybody's side of, I guess, the spectrum as well. I'm pretty familiar also with just kind of the overall Aspen idea and that overall plan that you guys have instated many years ago from this point, in keeping with sustainability and history, and et cetera, and creating a good cohesive place for all of us to enjoy, recreate, et cetera. And so with that, here I am, and happy to take whatever questions and such that each of you might have.
Okay, Patty.
Yeah, I want to thank you. Thank you for being brave. This is a busy committee that we have, and that we really do appreciate all of our volunteers. They put in a lot of time, energy, passion. You do have a very broad resume. I found it very interesting. You're not what I expected to see for somebody who plays female rugby. I've been involved with the Aspen Rugby Club for many years. I went on tour with them, not to play,
Okay.
as their team nurse, but yeah, therefore the bravery in you. Yeah, and I just think it's amazing that you've come forward. Is there any one major area of Pickens County Community Development Land Use Code that you think that we should be focusing on, or you think is of greatest concern to the community or to yourself?
Great question, thank you, and congratulations on being involved in the rugby club. I was secretary for
I
the
saw
team
that.
at one point. Yep.
I
and,
organized Ruggerfest. I was the only in 1989.
Oh wow, it's a big deal. I have friends from Florida and all over that.
Yeah, the
that
Florida Old Boys.
trickle in exactly. It's some 70-year-old men trying to play for 2 minutes at a time when they can't breathe. It's quite fun to
They
watch.
live
if you
on the
haven't
field
seen.
and off the field.
Exactly. Yes.
My son played for the gentleman for 1 year.
Oh, fantastic. There
Tommy
you
played
go.
for 25.
Wow.
Amazing. To your question, yes. So obviously, one area would potentially be, I guess, conservation of the environment. That is really what kind of keeps Aspen special. And I believe that it's important and integral, from the roots of what this, I guess, the previous committees have come together to create that idea. And, without it, this Aspen would not be Aspen. People wouldn't need to come. They wouldn't have as much of a desire. They could go to anywhere else in the world or the country. And I think, for animals, for our own peace of mind, for, the ability to kind of keep town as small as possible for now, until, maybe there's some more better connectivity and ideas and understanding in the long term as to, if there is a chance to grow any amount. I think there needs to be a lot of talk and discussion about that before that would be a potential possibility. I don't know if anybody else have noticed, but, since even the last few years, COVID happened, and et cetera, there's been, in my opinion, quite a number of more people here consistently, which I think has really taken a toll. We can see it on the roads. With the potholes this year. Obviously, the snowfall has been extraordinary and super fun, but, there are also drawbacks to that sometimes as well. And it can be challenging, to find parking or, go to a restaurant, especially as a local sometimes, because there's so many people coming from out of state, out of area, which sometimes can hinder even, just the ability for locals to experience, enjoy what we want to, on a consistent basis. And so I think, trying to keep that at a main focal point, and then from there, kind of ring outside of that, I think that's a key component and element.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you for applying. And reading your resume, I wasn't sure if you would be speaking with an Aussie accent or an American accent.
I can do both, Mike.
I thought at first it was a typo on the resume that it said Melbourne, Victoria, and then Melbourne, Florida also, because you've had associations with both. So I try to learn something new every week. And this week it is going to be, what is women's football in Australia? Is that rugby? Is
Or
it soccer? Or is it Australian rules football?
Great question, Steve. It could be all three, to be honest. But having been a premier soccer player, it is specific to soccer, actually.
Okay.
So I dabbled. I played in a couple beach tournaments and things like that when I was living there, but that was not my focal point. It was actually soccer.
Soccer, okay.
Yes.
Well, the word football indicates it would be soccer, but then they have Australian rules football, which is different than American football.
I do like to confuse people occasionally.
I thought it was the Melbourne that was your learning curve.
So looking at your some of your experience, one was in real estate. So are you still an active real estate broker at this point in time, which I think would give you some experience in terms of what land use applications you might see coming forward that you would be looking at.
Sure. Currently, I'm inactive. I have worked in real estate as a broker in Aspen and for Engel and Volkers for a few years. And my father, I do work with him on occasion, but not with anything locally. It's, all things here, in Florida and maybe Texas and the Front Range and abroad as well. So nothing specifically, to here. However, I have built up a good knowledge and working understanding of, a lot of the laws and the rules for the state of Colorado, from water rights to you name it. And so I do feel that having had, somewhat of a background in that it would be actually really beneficial towards, being on the committee and really kind of having a good base of knowing, what the mentality is for everybody, people that live here and have nothing to do with real estate, people that live here and are, working for an agency or brokerage, people that are trying to come here, people that are trying to leave here. I can kind of key in a little bit to everybody's background on some level and understanding. And I also not only did the residential piece, but I was working on the commercial side of things as well. So that I think would be actually really beneficial, because business and commercialization and, blocks being built up and bought and held, there's a lot of layers to all of this puzzle, so to speak.
Okay. Then you also had experience as a paralegal, and what was that with Matthew Ferguson?
It was,
and
yes.
Were you dealing some in land use applications in that position?
Yes. So working for Matt was obviously real estate law, business law, civil law as well. So there were a number of things that came into play that did also further my knowledge, not only in just the real estate, but also the contracts and beyond that as well.
Okay. And I think that past experience could be invaluable for being on the P&Z. Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Francie.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for applying. I have two questions, I guess. I'd like to understand in a little more detail some of maybe if you've dealt with any land use applications, or if any of the sales that you've worked with have been contingent on some land use issues, whether it's, the site plan for a location of the house or anything like that, just to understand how familiar you might be with Pickens Land Use Code. And then I also wonder if you have, if you know anything about our community growth advisory, Francie, process that's happening, and if there's any topics that group is dealing with that jump out to you.
Great questions. Thanks, Kelly. So to your first question, specifically in a couple facets, I would say I have touched upon that, the land use codes. I also actually worked for Bob Bowden a few years before I had my license as well, and he dealt with a couple of things. He had B2 Builders, he had the Aspen Design, and then he also had his own real estate company as well. And so I was able to kind of see all of that, and from that perspective, there were at times things that would come into play, of course, and especially with trying to create spec homes or finding, the appropriate land or an old home. There were a lot of things happening at that moment that did give me quite a good feel and understanding of everything. And then in terms of like the community growth plans and things of that nature, I am familiar with them. I would love to, dive in a bit deeper and get a little bit more understanding. I did attend a meeting of yours a few months ago, I guess, at this moment. And so I did hear a lot of layers of, you know, people that are homeowners in certain areas that are potentially going to be affected or not affected, from their perspective, from your guys' perspective as well, and just kind of seeing some overall maps, and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I haven't had time to think of another question.
Come on,
Thank
Francie,
you
you can
very
do
much.
it.
Thank you for applying. If we don't have any more questions, we'll move
Yeah,
on.
so we'll
Everybody
be
okay?
opening this back up. Sorry for
Yeah,
that
that's
delay,
what I was
but
gonna-
it just kind of came as news to us about Monday.
So we might give it a bit more time?
Um,
Is that what we're thinking?
Yes, and I think that Ellen was gonna reach out to P and Z at their next meeting and try to figure out, what they wanted to do there.
Okay.
So,
So as soon as we know, we'll let you know, Marianne.
Really
Great.
nice to meet you.
Thank you
I
for
think we
coming
might have
in.
met at Bob's with her. Yeah.
I think so as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time individually.
Yeah,
I
great.
appreciate
Thank
it
you.
so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coaching our kids.
Yeah.
Those are tough spots to fill. I'm
are
like, oh, I'm
certainly.
so glad you signed your kid up for soccer. Does anyone want to coach or t-ball or this or that?
That's how my son ended up coaching. He was getting that was not a pretty picture.
Well, I'm happy to do so, and it also helps me understand further, you know, that whole team element as well. So,
Great.
thank you very much for your service also.
Thank you. Enjoy
Because
the
he
sunshine.
couldn't handle the girls on the co-ed team. That was my son, Trevor.
Oh my God, t-ball's my favorite. Like kids laying around, you know, like in the outfield. It's so funny.
Trevor was always finding ladybugs in the grass in t-ball. Stopped the whole game. Yeah.
okay.
We have Tom?
Mr. Baker? You wanna come have a seat up here? So, Mr. Baker is applying for a position on the Election Commission, and we have currently 3 vacancies there. So, I just got another application today, so I'm trying to arrange another interview with this new applicant, but we do have 3 vacancies.
Can I just make a request?
Well, welcome, and thank you so much for coming in. Are you Tom or Thomas? Or?
Tom, it's
Tom.
fine.
Before we get started,
Yes.
can I just ask the election staff to remind us what the election commission does? Because we so rarely
Definitely.
see applicants for this board. And I never engaged with them, so. Otherwise, I would talk.
Ellen, do you want to come up?
Could you come up to a speaker?
Yeah.
I was thinking it was the other Tom Baker. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot.
But I didn't know he was with the FBI.
Honestly, the election commission hasn't operated since I started in June of '21. So what I think they do is they are nonpartisan, or you're not nonpartisan, you're Republican. But we try to have members of both parties, and I don't know if we'll have any unaffiliateds. And I
have
think
2
that
unaffiliated now.
two unaffiliated, really?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a
Those are the
5-member board.
current.
Okay. And I think that they resolve issues. I think that's what I believe your role is. Tom, maybe you can tell me a little bit more, but we're representing, our boss is in Europe, so she asked us to come and just sit in on this.
That's my understanding.
Yes.
If there is a dispute, a controversy or something, we jump in, do an initial look at it, and then give our report to you, the county commission. That's my understanding. We're not on-scene monitors or managers. There are other people that do that during the election, which you're all probably familiar with. And I was solicited for this because I was told that there needed to be at least one Republican on it. So I'm the former Republican chairman of Pitkin County, as some of you probably know, and I stepped down for a number of reasons, stepped down from that job in November, and the new chairman, John Kelly, suggested that I offer myself for this position. And basically it's, my philosophy is, which might sound corny to some, and some people use this expression, but I believe voting should be easy and voting fraud should be very difficult. That's my bottom line.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
you.
Thank you.
So does anybody have any questions or comments for Tom? Steve?
Well, first of all, looking at your resume, you have had a to me, what looks like a really fascinating career, working in the FBI and then being posted in various overseas posts with the State Department, and that is just really fascinating. I wish we could spend an hour just having you tell about your
Well, it has
some of
been,
your
and I've been
stories
very
that-
lucky.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, which some of you may know, that I stepped down in November, I was having a book published in December, and I wanted to devote my time to that. So if you want to know more about that fascinating career, buy the book.
Which book is that?
Which book is that? The Fall of the FBI by Thomas J. Baker.
Oh.
And I'll leave you each a book card. It's on Amazon. It's in Barnes and Noble. You can, and you will actually enjoy it. And there's a lot of, in the early part, the sub theme of it is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And most of it is the good, which is this interesting stuff you referenced. And there's a lot of stuff in there that people who are interested in government would probably enjoy reading. And then I talk about the bad, which is injustice. And it took me a long time to learn this, actually. I was very naive as a young man. But there is a lot of injustice. And I talk about that. And then the ugly is the disputes and the disagreements that have happened in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years involving the FBI and others. And that's the theme of the book, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I think you'll enjoy particularly the good.
And having, I mean, I agree that having a Democrat and a Republican, at least one, which right now there's not a Democrat on that board, but there are 2 unaffiliated voters. And I've recently become unaffiliated, largely because working at a statewide level on different boards, I'm always working with, both sides of the issue maybe are far apart on something, but when you're trying to find middle ground, to me, it worked better just being unaffiliated and be able to try to find, be the peacemaker and look for the middle ground that everybody can agree on. So I could see that on, any board we have, it would be beneficial to have all sides represented and all viewpoints is important.
Well, the way it was presented to me is that you actually, in your, I won't say requirement, but your guidelines, you want at least one from each of the 2 major parties, and I think the other 3 are to be unaffiliated, is how I understood
I'd
it.
have to go back to the bylaws.
If you can get them, okay.
Okay, but thanks for applying anyhow.
Yeah, it's a fascinating resume. So the last 20 years or so, though, you have not been working within the government. You've been working as a consultant.
Well, I've been very engaged for the last 20 years with the FBI as a consultant, most specifically with what some of you may be familiar with, what they call the FBI CJIS Division, Criminal Information Services Division in West Virginia, which provides services to state and local police. People think of fingerprint services, but also the National Crime Information Service and others. And I was very much involved in putting in place there in the past few years what they call next generation identification, which sort of takes the place of the AFIS, which people have heard about AFIS and IAFIS. And I did that, and I've also served, which you asked about different boards, I think, on your questionnaire. I served on for most of the last 20 years on the board of directors of the Justice Department Federal Credit Union. So sitting there, I sat with FBI and Justice Department officials on that board, and for several years I was the chairman of the board. I just recently stepped off that and now am running their foundation, which is what a foundation does, charitable work, it's obvious. So that's been keeping me busy too.
But you live in Aspen.
But yet, no, I live in Basalt, in Pitkin County, in Basalt, for over 20 years now. That's my residence. I also do have a small condominium just outside Washington, D.C. for when I'm back there. But this is my residence. This is where I vote. This is where I pay taxes. This is where my car is registered. This is my home.
Okay. Patty?
By choice.
I think it's interesting because we just had the previous applicant had some experience in Australia, as do you, had experience in Australia. So we have like a international theme running
Yeah.
here today. I would like to know just a wee bit about the Order of the Musketeers.
Oh, thank you. I haven't been asked about that in a long time. Yes, when I was in France as the legal attaché, and I won't take all the credit, although I was given all the credit through the efforts of a lot of people. There was a period of time when and this is in the book too, a lot of art, stolen art, was repatriated to France. Europe in general, but France in particular, has produced fabulous art over a millennium or two. And the United States, in the last 200 years, has produced some good art, but has never been able to catch up with Europe. So wealthy people, of which you have a lot here in Aspen, when they buy art, they often buy art that originated in Europe. Well, the art market is such, and this was an education for me, that stolen art is everywhere. And that's why to the buyers, or the smarter, I won't even say smart, the ethical buyers, they really become concerned about the provenance of the art. Where did it really originally come from? And there is stolen art and counterfeit art, but mainly stolen art floating around everywhere. In the period that I happened to be in Paris, the FBI and others in the United States recuperated, recaptured, whatever phrase you want to say, forfeited mainly from legitimate people. Because what happens, unfortunately, and this is how a lot of people get stuck, and I know there's been examples here in Aspen over the past decade, art is stolen, let us say in France, it gets quickly shipped out of the country, and that's all done by criminals, clearly. But ultimately, as it gets into the market and gets into the galleries, it passes into the hands of otherwise legitimate people, often unknowingly, and then it gets sold to other legitimate people and maybe gets inherited by their children. So you have people who really believe they own something, and they believe their parents owned it, and they believe it's theirs. And then someone comes along and makes a case, no, this was stolen, and it was stolen from a museum, it was stolen from a church, or from an individual. So in the period of time I was in France, to get back to your question, we repatriated an awful lot of stolen art to the French government, not just paintings, but tapestries, documents, other things. And because of that, there's this honorary order in France of the Order of the Musketeers. It's quite a thing. One previous American ambassador had gotten it, and then I was offered the award, and that was bestowed on me. So it's something that's understood by some people in Europe, particularly France, and it was an honor that I got. Thank you.
I think I saw a show about this, the stolen art, that a lot of it happened during war times, and raids on and countries and cities, prominent cities, that kind of got mixed up in the sale of art through the years to private owners, who then were shocked when somebody knocked down the door and said, "We're taking that. By the way, it was stolen," after they'd spent significant amount of money purchasing and insuring, etc. And a lot of it came up in the insurance process when people went to track it down for its wherewithal. Provenance, did you call it? Where it came from?
The provenance is the term for where it originally came from.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people don't. Yes, and that's a big part of the problem, is what was spoiled in World War II, particularly taken from the Jewish community.
Yes, that's probably
immense amount of stuff.
Well, and I just ask because I have a favoritism in, this is a Three Musketeers bar, and I usually carry them with me, so that one jumped right off the page at me when I got it. Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
So nice to meet you. I wonder if you know my dad, Tom McNicholas, who graduated from Fordham in 1969. As a history major, yeah.
He would have been just behind me. Where is he now?
He's in New Jersey.
Okay, well, good for him.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. Well,
yes.
You must all graduate with the gift of gab from Fordham, I think.
I'm sorry, my answers were rather lengthy.
I would like to ask, I'm curious, kind of what your opinion is of the state of the election discourse these days, and if you have any specific thoughts on how Colorado or Pitkin County might improve our elections.
Well, first of all, there has been a lot of discourse and disagreement and everything else. There's also been a history going back, decades and decades in a couple of our biggest cities in the country, and I'm thinking of Philadelphia, perhaps Chicago, perhaps Detroit, where there has been election fraud, and that's always in the back or the front of people's minds, depending on how you want to look at it. But in terms of Colorado, I've been always impressed and continue to be impressed at how well run the elections in Colorado are. Without a doubt, they're very well run. There's a lot of citizen involvement. There's a lot of checks and balances. Somebody probably could somewhere find flaws that may have happened. I don't know of any. I haven't heard of any. The elections, I think, in Colorado are just a model of how to do things. And in this county, they have been done very well. And there's been a lot of bipartisan oversight of the elections. And yeah, I think in this state, in this county, everything is, that I know of, is done very well.
That gives me great comfort. Thank you.
Nice to hear. Except for once in Grand Junction.
Excuse me?
Except for once in Grand Junction.
Oh, yeah, but that's not in this county.
No,
Just
but she
saying.
was.
We shouldn't forget about that.
And actually, that, not to beat a dead horse about it, I think I know what you're referring to, but that was an allegation that something had been wrong, and the focus on that individual was put under focus, was when she went and looked and tried to look into the machines and what happened. So perhaps she was misguided in doing that, but it's still, as far as I know,
There was no fraud.
nothing proven or
Right,
shown
yeah,
at the end of
definitely.
the day.
Well, I could sit and listen to you for a long time.
I know, God, your background, and the two of you. Yeah, we could have been here all day. Sorry, guys. We're gonna have to match up with these two.
So I really appreciate your offering to be a volunteer. It's a very generous thing, especially since you're writing books and obviously are quite busy and do a lot of
Don't
travel.
forget to get his book information there.
So, so you're going to give us some information on your book?
Yeah, this is the book card, and it leads you right back to Amazon.com, but you can buy it wherever else you want. And Explore bookstore in town here was very kind. They let me do a book talk. They purchased 25 copies of the book for the book talk, and they only had 2 left over at the end of the day.
Wow.
Oh, that's great.
So that was really great. Yes, and that's a really gem that you have in this town.
The bookstore. Love
a
bookstores.
gem.
Yeah, thank you. It was really nice to meet you.
Okay.
It really was.
Am I
Give him to
dismissed?
Charlotte and she
I
will.
can pass this around to the commission.
And Charlotte will be in touch with you.
Yes.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you, Tom. Really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet all of you. Thank you.
Oh, great.
Back to
Okay.
you, Charlotte.
Next, we have Chelsea Clark.
And that's a familiar face.
And Chelsea's here for her renewal interview. She's willing to continue serving on P&Z, and we're thankful for that.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a
First
little
time
bit
I was at
about your time at P&Z and how you're anxious to move forward.
Be happy to. Thanks. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Chelsea Clark from in person before, and it's great to be here in person. I have been on the Planning and Zoning Commission since 2017. So this would be my second renewal of it for a third term. And since beginning, I had a lot to learn, and I was very relieved to be not a chair or a co-chair and let someone else lead the meetings for a period of time. And after 3 years, right at the beginning of COVID in 2020, Jeffrey Woodruff and I, he became the chair and I became co-chair. So we ended up talking a lot more, and I became a lot more involved, taking a quasi-leadership position. And he is really knowledgeable about the process, as is staff. None of them are here right now, but they are amazing support and resources. And 2020 was a really dynamic time, I'm sure, for you as commissioners and also as an appointee to the Planning and Zoning Board, because we all had to adapt and find ways to become present in the meetings while being very far apart from each other, not having that dynamic that we appreciate of looking each other in the eye and feeding off of each other's ideas and energy, that's gone when you're looking at a computer screen, and it's an important part, I think, of government. So the best thing that could have happened is that we had a lot of sidebar conversations between Jeffrey and I about how to get the other commissioners engaged and how to lead the meetings in a way that led to meaningful discussions and meaningful outcomes and fair and appropriate evaluations of applicants' proposals and listening to the staff's memos. And thank God the staff is so good at writing such thorough memos that articulate the important points of law, and also the resolutions that we send up to you guys. So I think the most rewarding part of the difficulties that we all experienced in 2020 was active participation and active involvement through conversations directly with the other members of the board. And we're taking on an important task, as you guys all are aware of, the present Community Development Engagement Board, and I'm one of the appointees from the P&Z Commission on that board. So I've been listening to the last, I think I missed 2 of the last 15 meetings the Citizen Board has held, and I'm really impressed with how, again, the staff has led community members and educated them in the process of making changes to the land use code or making tweaks to the way that growth management occurs in the county. And so that's another big task that I feel like it's sort of our baby to see forward. And I'm relatively young. I'm the youngest member of the P&Z board, but luckily there's senior members like Joe Kraybacher, who is also an attorney like me, and so I like his questions and his feedback that he's given to the Community Development Citizen Board or the advisory board, and I'm looking forward to working with all of the P&Z members in that effort going forward, as well as just fair and reasonable evaluations of all the applications that come forward.
Well, thank you really a lot, Chelsea, for your years of service. P&Z is challenging. It's a lot of work. It's like lots of prep, and you need a lot of knowledge. So I think we all really appreciate that. Patty?
Yeah, I want to thank you too, Ben. And I'm glad you brought up your involvement with the Citizens Advisory Board. That's key for me. And I've watched you grow. I've watched you grow from your first meeting. When I first started on P&Z many years ago, our senior member, I was scared to death of him. Absolutely scared to death of him. And he and I became really good friends because he became a mentor and a coach. It was a very interesting group. And we met in the Board of Commissioners room over in the courthouse. It was about this big. And Steve Whipple and I would usually sit together because he knew I was scared to death of him, I think. But we became good friends because you have to work together, even if you differ in opinions. I thought it was always a learning experience, just listening to the discussions. So again, I want to thank you. I don't have any questions because I've known you for a couple years now, many years. And I just think you're stepping up with the Citizens Advisory Board. I'm sure I know the wealth of knowledge that board has been gaining and the wealth of information that they've been given to learn from. So I just wanted to thank you. Thanks.
I guess I should add one thing.
Steve.
I'm the current chair now. Jeffrey stepped back, and since I guess it was my turn, and I'm really reluctant to speak in meetings because I like to save everyone's time unless there's something valuable to say. So I don't necessarily see myself being chair for a long time, but I'm taking the role because it feels like a duty. So I'll continue to grow.
I never had that honor.
Yes, well, it's mine now. Thank you.
So a big role of the chairman actually is not to speak, but to draw out the thoughts from the other members of the board, and then you kind of summarize it all and keep the process moving. So you might be in a good position there. I gather a big problem with the pandemic has been everybody going to virtual meetings, and now everybody has hybrid meetings. It's much more effective to be at a meeting in person, and yet I think the P and Z is struggling with that, with some people continuing to just come on virtually. Is that the situation, and how would you go about trying to get more in-person participation?
Well, good point. Yes. In the last year, we've stayed pretty much all virtual. And as someone who appreciates the convenience of that, I get it because I travel a lot. But for my first meeting as chair, I said I will be there in person, and I look forward to seeing everybody else there with me too. So everybody else did show up in person except for Jasmine, and that's okay, because sometimes there might be an exception, and Suzanne Caskey still has COVID, so she could not. She literally is sick, so she shouldn't come. But she still participated, and I'll continue to be the one who leads by example, because I agree with you that it's more valuable to be in person now that we're healthy again, for the most part.
Great. That's a good point, Steve.
Kelly?
Yeah, nice to see you. How are you?
Too.
Good.
Good, thanks.
I think sometimes you and I cross each other on like the cross country path with both earbuds in, having conversations with folks.
I love cross country.
Yeah, me too.
I haven't recognized you yet, but I'll look for you.
Or my giant fluffy dog that I'm constantly like yelling, "Come, Pepper!" I was wondering, do you think the P&Z board is well balanced? The points of view at the table is fairly well balanced right now? I know there's a lot of, you hear that there's like a 6-1 vote, and there's a lot of, or a lot of majority votes, and I don't make assumptions from that because I know a lot of the consensus building happens before a vote is taken. But I'm just curious what your thought is.
It depends on the subject matter and what the application's about or what we're discussing. Even on contentious topics like the solar farm, I think there was only one person that didn't vote with us for like technical reasons having to do with like historic P&Z votes that he'd made in the past. So I think he just stuck with his. That was James Vanchi voted against the solar farm, but everybody else voted for. Even I think Cliff, who used to be like an outlier, although you might have to correct my memory of this, but and I think that was because the application met with all of the land use code requirements. We weren't going outside of what we were required to do in accordance with the letter of the law. So that's why the voting was consistent. Our Pandora, the 2 times that we voted for it and the 4 times that we heard it, we all voted unanimously on that because the application was in accordance with the law. There was no special request that I recall being a reason to vote no. So in those instances, when we're all voting unanimously, it might give the appearance of balance, but I don't know the commissioners personally enough to know if there's any one particular person who has an opinion that is somewhere off the reservation, or they're entitled, which they're completely entitled to. But unlike the general understanding of following what the law prescribes and voting it, because you can't vote if an applicant is entitled to something under the law, you can't vote because your personal preference is against that. So I think people vote pretty fairly, but everybody has their ties to the community in a different background than me, so I don't know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I think.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions for you. Jeffrey had expressed a desire that the P&Z and the BOCC meet more frequently to discuss all the things that we need to discuss that we don't. I'm wondering if you're in agreement with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wrote that in my application renewal thing online, and some of the I guess they're standard questions that you ask of all applicants for renewal, and I said that same thing. So I fully agree with Jeffrey in that regard.
And then also on a couple of occasions, he sort of pushed us a little bit to consider changing the land use code so that you guys wouldn't be forced into making decisions just on legality that otherwise you might not want to make. It was like about a year ago, I think, when we met, and you guys were all online, and he had said something at that meeting, and I asked for clarity at that time. I said, "Are you saying that you would welcome some changes so you wouldn't feel with your hands quite so tied?" And I asked him again during his interview, and then I'm wondering, is this something you guys have discussed at P&Z or anything?
No, in fact, I don't even remember his commenting about that in a group meeting. Maybe I missed it, but no, I'm not even sure what he's talking about. So I would need more information on that. But I'm okay with our tasks as a board now, and I don't see any reason to change them. Our charge is pretty clear. That
No,
we're-
not what you're expected to do, but actually the parameters under which you have to make your decisions that are in the land use code is what he was referring to.
I'm comfortable with our parameters.
Okay.
I don't
great.
want a lot of authority, and I like the guidance that the county council gives us as far as stay in your lane. And we try to. At least I do.
Okay.
I don't know. I can ask Jeffrey for more follow-up on that in the future and listen to what he has to say, and maybe a specific example of what he means. But
I think it's great she's reapplying.
Yeah.
As I said, brave soul. You were brave for playing rugby, and she's brave for coming back to us.
wow, no black eyes. I can see.
At the moment.
It's been a while since she played.
So do we have anything else for Chelsea?
No, it's just good to see you.
I think so.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, for
Hopefully
your
we
service.
see more of you. We'll definitely.
We're hoping.
Yeah,
I
that'd
think
be
the
great.
first community development meeting will be a group one to hear what the citizens panel says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're really looking forward to that coming back to us.
I'll be there.
Great. Thank you.
Cheers.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Sure. Thanks, everyone, and nice to see you.
Okay. So, retirement board, Mr. Hennefeld. And you can come out.
That's me.
Hi, Roger.
How you folks doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
How's Naomi?
You know Naomi?
Yes,
How do you
I
know
worked
my
with
daughter Naomi?
because I worked with her at Hops.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
She's doing well, actually. She's back. Can we talk personal?
You can, no, don't look.
I don't
Just
know.
for
Talk
a
about
quick.
I'm a financial.
Yeah, okay, so worked at Hops. Is that where the hobby, your favorite hobby?
I am a beer
That
drinker.
jumps right off the page
We're
at
gonna
me,
get
by the way.
personal and I'll have a beer
His hobby
tonight.
is
After
beer
this
drinking.
experience, I'll need two probably. But yeah, she's in grad school at CU, and
Yeah.
Naomi's great.
Oh, good.
This experience?
I'm sorry?
What you said after this experience?
Being interviewed by such a high-powered panel here.
I don't think you need to fret.
I'm not, no.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Roger. And does anybody have questions for him other than
Is
about
hobby?
his dog?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, as we do, we just really appreciate people who come forward for our volunteer committees. It's really critical for the operations of Pickens County, and we appreciate the time, the passion, so we truly appreciate your applying. I just have to say, for somebody who has a background in numbers, I think I could trust you. There's just something about you. Has nothing to do with the beer drinking hobby, because I don't drink beer, but I don't know, it's just something. And I don't remember the last time I interviewed anybody for the retirement board.
Jeff Seltzer was the
Yeah.
last applicant.
Oh, it's been very difficult to find people. So
My friend Ann, and that's why I'm here.
it's been quite difficult to find people. For the longest time, we did have a couple of gentlemen who were very committed and stayed on for some long time, but they've both resigned. So we actually have 2 vacancies, and Roger has agreed to fill one of them. So thank him for that. Yeah.
I have 2 feet, so if you need me to fill.
Yeah, and how often do you guys meet?
4 times a year.
And you have lunch?
We do.
That's always a good reason to be on that board. Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you, and I'm looking through your resume. Yeah, I think it's great, and working with Ann is always great fun. She's very smart. So just,
Served
yeah.
together on a board of another local institution, so
Yeah,
that's how we came to know each other. And she has awesome pictures of the fire from a couple of years ago.
she's got awesome pictures of
That's what I
everything.
was
And
thinking.
did I not see on here, you're on a homeowners board?
Yeah.
You know, that's another brave person.
That one
Yeah.
was kind of a well,
Yeah, and the 5 Points film.
That's right. I know Ann
That's
from
from
Five
that.
Points.
Oh, that's great.
And CMC Foundation, I'm involved in that.
Yeah, yeah.
I served there for a number of years too, so that's.
And Leeds School. I did a
Oh,
talk
good.
at the Leeds,
Oh, good for
Leeds
you.
about affordable housing, which was very fascinating. Yeah, and the audience was definitely well educated on just about everything. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you for applying. I think it's great.
So do all of the decisions about purchases and plans go through the board for the retirement program, or?
Yes, we have investment advisors, Invest, who basically manage all of the retirement funds on behalf of the county, but the retirement board members, of which there's 2 employees of RAFTA, because it's a joint retirement plan with RAFTA, 2 employees of RAFTA, 2 employees of Pitkin County, 2 citizen members, and then the treasurer, which is me. So we review any changes in the plan, makeup or, trading out funds for particular reasons. And so every meeting we have an advisory by Invest, usually in person, and they tell us what their recommendations are about buying or selling particular funds within the portfolio. But we really heavily rely on our citizen advisory members to kind of check and balance with Invest, because none of the employees typically have any experience in that area. So citizen advisory board members are critical in this role. And we usually have a great dialogue with our investment advisors in Invest. So
And that's really good to know. I didn't know we had this a joint employee retirement program with RAFTA.
yes, so
I had no
RAFTA, as
idea.
you know, was originally part of Pitkin County, and when they split, instead of trying to piece out the single retirement fund, we decided to keep it as one, and then form a joint retirement board between the 2 organizations. So we have one, investment advisor, one payment. So we have to make all decisions together jointly. So I work very closely with Mike Yang, who's
Oh,
my
yeah.
counterpart at RAFTA. So
I didn't know
it's a
that.
good
Wow.
good collaboration.
Yeah, Kelly.
And just to clarify, Roger, this is what you do in your daytime job, is advise on these types of portfolio.
Yeah, I moved
Compositions.
to Aspen 25 years ago to work for Wally Obermeyer when he started his
I saw that.
investment advisor business. And it's grown pretty significantly. It's been fun to be part of, and it's, yes, that's what I do.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Obermeyer Wood, and we're literally right over here in Obermeyer Place. Now, are commissioners employees of the county, or are you volunteers?
Volunteers.
Yes.
We're both.
So you do participate in this program? then?
We do.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're familiar with that, yeah.
It's interesting that you asked that, though, because my son had been asked to run for this seat, and he didn't want to, so he called me up and said, "Are you interested in running for county commissioner?" And I was like, "Yes, that's perfect. It's just what I want to do." And I thought it was volunteer. So I was really happy when I found out that it wasn't.
And
Now
and
she's
you're elected
questioning a
official?
lot of her mental health issues, but,
Yeah, we're elected.
Okay.
but we work together with all of staff
Yeah.
as a team.
And
I
I'm
did.
here to help make sure your hard-earned retirement money is well looked
It's making us
after.
money.
Actually,
So we can retire.
I knew that, my house would be on Red Mountain. I live in Basalt.
well, when I found out that it was a paid position, then I looked at the retirement, and I was hoping it would be para, because I was in para for a long time, and it would have made
Oh,
a
the teachers?
significant difference in my yearly pension.
Yeah.
But it's not.
So Carbondale South, where is that? That's your HOA.
Palmdale
Is,
South,
is it the
yeah,
one behind the
by
Big
the
O
high
Tire?
school. It's by
Yeah,
the high
south
school
side.
and off of 133.
Oh, oh, it's over there. Oh, it's over in your neck of the woods.
Where?
It's off of 133.
That's an investment property I have with a couple of
Oh.
partners, and I got the financials on that, the homeowners association, and I don't know, and I digress, but
You can digress.
you're asking why I'm on that board, and when I looked at the financials as an owner, I wanted to get involved to protect the investment, and that's why I did.
So that's not your residence?
No, definitely.
Okay.
I live in Basalt.
Do we have
So-
one
But we manage money for a lot of HOAs in town and stuff like that. So I know what a reserve and capital fund look like. I know what the.
We've got another board for you.
So,
That's okay.
as I recall, the Obermeyer, I don't know, was the family or if it was Wally's business, did a small hydroelectric?
Well, yep.
Is that still?
Yeah, Biocido down in Durango, and
Yeah.
it's still operational. And
Uh-huh.
that has an interesting history because years ago there was a huge fire down there, and they drained that reservoir, and so obviously no water, no cash flow, no. But that quickly reversed itself. But yeah, they
So
still.
that's still part of the
That was that
portfolio?
big fire in Durango.
Yes, Wally's still involved in that. Him and his brother Henry, he was the brains behind it. I don't know if you've ever met Henry.
Yeah, Henry Obermeyer, I remember that. So, yeah, you would be working on this board with a couple of Pitkin County employees who I gather they're trying to represent all of our interests in it, but I think it's good to have citizens who have a financial background to give that expertise, so if we could find another person to fill the other seat, then that would be the best scenario to have that balance.
That would be great, yes. And the layout of the board is actually set by state statute.
Mhm.
That's a requirement, the two citizens, the two employees, and the treasurer.
And Raft is represented on that board.
Yes.
Okay. So the board is actually more than 4 people? There are also representatives that RAFTA appoints?
Is Mike on the board?
Yes. So Mike and then 2 RAFTA employees, and then the 2 citizen reps do both.
Okay, so there's actually 8 members on the board.
Yeah.
And we only have the
But we
4 names
vote
on our
independently. Well, we have to make the same decisions because we have all the same money, but we vote independently.
We just reappointed a
Oh, okay.
county employee to
It's
this
sort of
board.
like EOTC meeting then, with 2 different entities looking
Yeah.
at the same thing.
It's one
and
big
both
pool.
voting on it
3
individually.
entities.
Well, EOTC is
TCs.
3, but this would be
Yeah.
2.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I would view it as one big pool of funds
Mm-hmm.
that is hard-earned retirement savings for employees both of Rafter and the county. And as nobody's saving for retirement for you. The government, I mean, maybe Social Security a little bit, but you're doing it yourself. And that money can be invested pretty much how you want. And my sense is, not being privy to this actual plan, but just given my experience with these types of plans, whether they're 401k plans or whatever the umbrella might be, it's ultimately the investment advisor provides a platform to invest money, stocks, bonds, other types of investments. And it's up to the individual to decide what their risk tolerance and goals are and things like that, because everybody's a little different. So I would imagine that my role and my contribution would be to monitor and observe the options available. To the extent that an individual has questions and wants free advice, I'm always happy to provide that, because it's probably I'm getting compensated probably for what it's worth. But that would be kind of the way I view my role, is to kind of just give some oversight to that, so that the savers are not put in a position that could jeopardize their situation without their consent, if you will. Did I understand that?
We got
I'm
it.
not sure anybody would consent to jeopardize their investment, but
Yeah.
Well, it's investing there's all kinds of people in the business, and sometimes people make investments that they don't fully understand.
yeah, for
And
sure.
you don't want to put an investment in a platform like this. I don't think that could lead to a bad outcome that somebody was expecting, was not expecting. And I met with Mike and talked a little bit about the raft up portion of it too, and kind of get a sense for who will be serving and who the beneficiaries ultimately are. And this is my first foray into the public service, and that's why I'm doing it, to meet folks like yourselves and to help the community.
Well, we appreciate
That's
it.
my motivation.
Thank you very much for
And to do it
being
in a
willing.
favor. No.
Do we have anything else for Roger?
No, it's nice to meet
Thank
you.
you for coming in.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ann.
Likewise. All right.
Thank you.
I'll go have 2 beers now.
Yeah. I think
Thank
that
you very much,
qualifies you for
Charlotte.
5, actually.
Thanks. I'll be back next week with all of the,
So next week we'll
decisions.
make our decisions, except for possibly P and Z.
correct.
Okay.
I just pulled up the Nashville shooting and saw those kids.
So I don't believe we don't have any further business. Okay.
All right.
We will be
All right.
adjourned.
Thank
you
you.
very much,
Thank
Grassroots.
you.
Thanks, Andorra. Thanks, Mikala.